The answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome to The Alex Jones Show on this Tuesday, January the 10th, 2017. I'm David Knight, your host. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about what is first and foremost in the news cycle, and that is Jeff Sessions' confirmation hearings. We're going to have a lot of confirmation hearings because we've only got about 9 days left before the inauguration, and there's a lot of people in the Trump cabinet that need to be confirmed. So there's going to be a lot of hearings. Of course, the first one up, and it's fitting that the first person coming up for the hearing would be Jeff Sessions, because he was the first person to take a stand for Donald Trump. And of course, he was the only person in the Senate to even bother to read this massive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and to warn us about what was in it. And so we're indebted to him for that. We're indebted to him for the things that he has given to Donald Trump, explaining this to him. Donald Trump listened. The rest of the Senate didn't. Jeff Sessions read all that. He put together a big presentation with his staff, and nobody would listen to him on Capitol Hill. Very telling. But of course, now he turned over one of his key staff members, became a key staff member for Donald Trump, and he is now going to be writing the inaugural speech for him. So a lot of involvement there with Donald Trump. So that's one of the reasons why the Democrats want to attack him. The other reason, of course, is that we've got people like Cory Booker, who is out of nothing but personal ambition making false accusations about Jeff Sessions. Cory Booker, of course, is going to run for president. This is a very glib, friendly face that we see out there. He's going to run, and he's now playing the race card. He's putting himself out there saying, hey, I'm going to be available to do whatever you want. Nothing is beneath me. It was kind of like the end of The Incredibles. I am the underminer. I may be beneath you, but nothing is beneath me. That should be Cory Booker's theme song, okay? Because he knows better than that. And of course, you've probably seen now the clips where he makes these announcements about Jeff Sessions, where they had a civil rights award that they put together, and he complimented Jeff Sessions on the work that he had done, and now he is completely trashing him, playing the race card. So we're going to talk about that. We've also got the inventor of email joining us today for the very first time, Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and he's going to be talking to us not only about that and about the military-industrial complex, but the key thing that we brought him on to talk about is GMO. He is a biologist, a biological engineer, actually, by his PhD. He went to the MIT Department of Biological Engineering, has a PhD in systems biology. So he's going to be talking to us about the dangers of GMO and how these things are all related. And also, we're going to be taking a look at updates from stories yesterday. We're going to get into that right after the break. We've had some fact-checking done on Donald Trump as to whether or not Meryl Streep is overrated. What a ridiculous thing that is, to fact-check that kind of an opinion. I mean, we know, as I said yesterday, the Golden Globes are totally phony. So phony that they stopped broadcasting them for a number of years on NBC as the FCC warned them about it. It's one of the phoniest of all the award shows, but somebody's going to fact-check whether or not Meryl Streep is overrated or not. We also have some interesting developments on climate change that are coming out. And of course, you can see this article, Climate Depot. Pravda scientists are now warning that we're in a new ice age. We're going to take a look at how CBS spun the report on this Chicago torture victim, said he was actually attacked by whites. So we're going to be taking a look at all of that. We're also going to look at some news stories that are breaking today besides Jeff Sessions. We have the U.S. small business optimism is surging, the most since 1980. What happened in 1980? Oh, well, that was when Ronald Reagan became president. People know that things are going to be good when you've got a president-elect who's talking about cutting regulation and cutting taxes. And yet yesterday evening, there was a town hall meeting in Vermont, and Bernie Sanders was called on over-regulation, over-taxation by, guess what, a small businessman, and Bernie Sanders doubled down. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with a lot of breaking news. Welcome to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight on this Tuesday, January the 10th, 2017. We are now 9 days away from the Trump inauguration, and the confirmation hearings are beginning. And, of course, the first person up is Jeff Sessions. Now, Roger Stone is going to be joining us in the second hour to break down the politics of what's going on in Capitol Hill. We also have Alex Jones is going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour talking about the attacks on free speech, the attacks on Matt Drudge, the attacks on INFOWARs, and, of course, the attacks in general on the Internet. So he'll be joining us at the bottom of the hour. And, as we go back and we look at this, you might say, even if you do, at this point, believe this ridiculous red herring narrative that the Russians hacked our elections. Of course, it was Hillary Clinton being exposed. And I can imagine if you're anywhere close to Hillary, if you're anywhere in that area of upstate New York, you can probably hear her, or Long Island, wherever it is that she lives outside of the city. You could probably hear her screaming at the top of her voice, "I wish email had never been invented." Well, we have the guy who invented email today, so I guess we could say we got the guy who took down Hillary Clinton. Because when we got a glimpse of her hoisted up there, he gave her enough rope, or I guess enough technology, that she actually hung herself. And when we saw her up there, got a glimpse, we said, "Ooh, don't want that." Okay, so that's we got him on. Now, he is the inventor of email. We're not going to talk to him about email so much. We will talk to him about the military-industrial complex, because he's got some very strong opinions about that. But he is a biological engineer. He has a PhD in biological engineering and systems biology. And as part of his research, one of the things that we reported on here on InfoWars a few days ago, maybe I think it was the end of last week, was something that he discovered in his work as a biologist about GMOs. And so we're going to talk to him about that. We're going to talk to him about his development of email and other technological issues, and about the military, industrial, and academic complex, because that's all a part of it. Now, we've had a lot of news that's breaking, and we're going to take a look at Jeff Sessions. As a matter of fact, before we get started with some of the updates on some of the news that we saw yesterday, let's take a look at what's just been happening. One of the interesting things that just came out was that Jeff Sessions said that he will recuse himself from any possible prosecutions of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. That is going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And, of course, you could look at that as good news, bad news. One, he thinks when he says that he would recuse himself, unless it was somebody direct, I don't know. To say that you're going to recuse yourself is not saying there isn't going to be any investigation, so that's the good news. We don't necessarily have to have Jeff Sessions lead the investigation of Hillary Clinton. It's good enough just to have one. So to say that I'm going to recuse myself from the investigation, that's good, because that would remove some of the claims of partisan politics that are going to be made, and of course they will be made about that. But it's something that needs to move forward. I hope that the Trump administration will move forward with that. But that's the first thing we saw. But actually, a little bit before he made that announcement, of course, we have the race card that is being played on Jeff Sessions in a totally unprecedented way. Cory Booker is prostituting himself to the racist left, saying that he doesn't, he's going to do whatever he needs to play this beloved race card that the Democrats have. So they had some people dress up in Ku Klux Klan outfits and disrupt the Senate hearing today. Let's show you a clip of what happened today earlier.
You speak for the people. Jefferson, thank you so much for being here for the people.
There you go. A couple of guys in white hoods. I don't know. So I guess at this point you see them throwing them out, and I guess they're going to go get their lawyer, Morris Dees, the guy who founded Southern Poverty Law Center. Get Morris Dees on the phone, because, you know, if you're the Ku Klux Klan and you're ironically in Alabama where Jeff Sessions is, who do you turn to for legal help? Well, if it's in the middle of the civil rights, at the beginning of the civil rights movement, and you got a bunch of people that get beaten up and their bus burned in Alabama, they turn to Morris Dees, the guy who ran the Southern Poverty Law Center 10 years later. Morris Dees got the Klan off. They paid him a fortune at the time. And the dollars that were available there, it was more than a family of four would make. And Morris Dees set out the rest of the civil rights movement and then started profiting from it. He completely switched sides. He got the mailing list of, I think it was Jimmy Carter, when Jimmy Carter was running. It was some Democrat that was running for president. And he said, I'm going to do the direct mail for you. And he got a hold of the list, and then he turned that list into the Southern Poverty Law Center. And all he does is that kind of phony stuff that you saw there at the Sessions hearing, the kind of phony stuff that Cory Booker has been doing. That's where the Southern Poverty Law Center hangs out. So maybe those guys, the Ku Klux Klan that got thrown out of there, the Ku Klux Klan protesters, they can get Morris Dees to defend them now. Now, I want to do a couple of updates. Of course, we talked about Meryl Streep yesterday, and I don't want to beat this thing to death, but I think this is an interesting update. It was up on the Drudge Report. This is from Business Insider. Josh Barrow put this out, and he said, this AP story shows a problem with fact-checking. And the amazing thing is that they go out, the AP has a fact-check. Is Meryl Streep overrated? Trump picks on a decorated star. So Donald Trump has a tweet that says Meryl Streep, tremendously overrated or whatever. So, you know, you got to understand that winning the Golden Globes is totally meaningless, okay? It's the Hollywood foreign press, and that's what they were happy to talk about yesterday. Said, oh, we're three things that Donald Trump really hates. Hollywood, foreigners, and the press. Well, you know, it's a garbage organization. I talked about that yesterday. I talked about how the Golden Globes really doesn't mean anything. If you want somebody that really knows what's going on about, read about what Gary Oldman has talked about the Golden Globes. He's really taken these people down. You get a lot of different metrics that you can use. You can talk about box office. You can talk about these self-congratulatory trophies. You know, if you want to get together and hand each other trophies, it's about as meaningless as winning the Miss Popularity contest in high school, really. And do people list that on their resume? Maybe some people do list that on their resume. But the point that he makes is overrated is a statement of an opinion. It's not a fact. There's no way that you can fact check an opinion. See, you understand? That makes a difference there. We're getting so much on the fact checks. Now, we can go back and we can fact check Cory Booker by saying, look, he was praising Jeff Sessions not too long ago, and now he's calling him an intolerable racist. Now, that's the fact checking, showing this contradiction. Or going back like we did yesterday, the clips that Darren McBreen found, where we had Josh Earnest say, look, I've had 17 intelligence organizations tell me that the Russians did this, whatever this is. And he said, so I have to believe them. And so Darren said, hey, didn't we hear that before? Didn't we hear Colin Powell say, we've got 16 intelligence agencies that told me that we have weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, so I guess we have to go with that. So these are the weapons of mass destruction that they use against us. But he finishes up his story. He says, this is an opinion column. The thoughts expressed are those of the author, just in case the AP wants to fact check that. Another follow-up to the story that we've heard a lot about, and of course that was the horrific case of the 4 black teenagers beating and torturing a mentally handicapped white teenager and streaming it live on Facebook at the time. They forced him to say F Trump, F white people. They flicked cigarette ashes on a wound that they inflicted on him. They made him drink from a toilet and so forth and so on. Well, how did CBS report this? CBS Radio. Dean Reynolds. Good job, Dean. You're our fake news face of the day here. And this is what he said in the video. And he's implying that this kid is black and that his tormentors are racist white people. If you listen to this and think, if you just hear his characterization of the story, he doesn't define this, but it sounds like a black kid that is being tortured by some white people. In the video, he is choked and repeatedly called the N-word. See, when he says that, you think, oh, he's a black guy, okay? They're calling him the N-word. His clothes are slashed. He's terrorized with a knife. His alleged captors repeatedly reference Donald Trump. Okay? Police are holding 4 people in connection with the attack. So they say he's choked, he's cut, he's tortured, he's called the N-word, and his captors reference Donald Trump. There you go. So it was a case of white racism. This is exactly what Cory Booker is doing to Jeff Sessions today. And again, as I point out, we're going to have Roger Stone talking about that when he joins us in the second hour. Now, yesterday we also had, as their final report before the new administration, Fish and Wildlife came out and told us the polar bears are all going to die for the umpteenth time. We've heard this now. And so I want to give you an update on that. 2 updates on it, actually. Washington Times points out that a polar bear conservation group blasts Obama administration's climate change alarmism. They say the polar bear was listed as a threatened species in 2008 as a result, they said, of declining Arctic sea ice. But its population has proved remarkably resilient, although the Fish and Wildlife people won't mention that. They also don't tell you that the recent decline in population size recorded in one particular area, the southern Beaufort Sea, was caused by thick spring sea ice in 2004 to 2006, not reduced summer ice. So when the ice got too thick, they couldn't get to something that they needed to eat. Okay, but here's the other part of this. This story from Climate Depot, Mark Morano, Pravda says scientists now warn of a new ice age as temperatures plummet to minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit in Russia. And this is not just Pravda, it was Pravda in Germany, but they were referencing an American scientist report out of Yale. Yeah, a Yale scientist, Y. Liu. A recent paper published said that they've overlooked the possibility of collapsed Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. I think I pronounced that right. Should the ocean heat conveyor collapse, he says, there would be a prominent cooling over the northern North Atlantic and neighboring areas. Sea ice increases over Greenland, Iceland, Norwegian seas, and the south of Greenland. In other words, if you want to sum it up, and here's how Pravda summed it up, and here's how I would sum it up, CO2 has nothing to do with it. Rather, the influence of the sun is the dominant factor. How about that? It was right in front of our face the entire time. It was the sun. You see, they went out and they flipped a coin, and it was like heads it's warming, tails it's cooling, and it's come up tails. It's kind of like when Bill Cosby used to be a comedian. He had that routine about flipping the coin in the American Revolution. Well, these guys are wearing the red suits and marching in a straight line, and we're going to be shooting from behind the walls because it's totally phony. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, filling in for Alex. He's going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour with a special report on the attacks on the freedom of the press, the attacks on Matt Drudge, on InfoWars, on the internet in general, and of course, the internet is completely down and has been now for about 10 days in the Marshall Islands. We'll tell you a little bit about that in just a moment. Before we do, we'll let you know that we now have BioTrue Selenium back in stock. There's no question that selenium is a very, very important trace mineral that you should have for your health. That's very well known. It supports the thyroid gland, the immune system, DNA production, eyesight. So there's no question that you need selenium. Just take a look at the research out there. But the question is, where do you get a great source, the best source of this? And so we've gone out of our way to produce BioTrue Selenium, made from 100% organic mustard seed. Nearly every other selenium supplement on the market is produced from synthetic selenium. And that's the difference at InfoWarsLife.com. Now, this has been sold out for quite some time. It's been sold out for weeks. It is now back in stock. Just wanted to let you know that that's back in stock. Now, of course, if you were signed up for auto ship, you don't run out of the things that you need on a regular basis, things that you have made a part of establishing a habit of healthy nutritional baseline supplementation that you've got there. So if you sign up for auto ship, number one, you're going to get what you want. We'll hold that back in reserve for you. You will get that on a regular basis. You'll also get a 10% discount. And if your regular recurring order is more than $50, you will also get free shipping. We try to incentivize that for you because it helps us to know what our supply lines are going to be. That helps us to operate more efficiently. So it's a win-win situation even with that. But that's why we put out these supplementations, and that's why at the beginning of the year, to help you get into a habit of taking care of your body, everybody is looking at starting new health resolutions at the beginning of the new year. We have a Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative. We put several items at 30% off, several at 20% off. The 30% off items, Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2, Nascent Iodine. At 20% off, we have Secret 12. That's our vitamin B12 liquid formulation, Liver Shield, Knockout, our all-natural sleep aid, and Prostagard, and many others at InfoWarsLife.com. That's part of our New Year's sale that you will find there. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, last night, Bernie Sanders and a Donald Trump supporter went at it with each other. This is reported by CNN, so of course CNN is on Bernie's side. But it was interesting because the small business owner was criticizing him for taxes and regulations, and Bernie Sanders did not back down. He's proud of taxes and regulations, and so he defended them. The small business owner, Jim Jacobs, said he was concerned about the effects of what he called the raft of burdensome regulation. Remember, it was just yesterday, there was a story, even from the liberal Daily News in New York, talking about a beloved Chinese restaurant that shut down after over 25 years, saying they just couldn't handle the regulation and the taxes. And it wasn't just New York City's excessive regulations. They're also talking about Obamacare and other things that they were being forced to do. That's the reality. And the reality is, the other reality that Bernie Sanders doesn't want to talk about, if you want to see what he values, if you want to see his system in action, take a look at Venezuela. It was Bernie Sanders who was talking in the 1980s about how wonderful the Sandinistas in Nicaragua were. And that's why I called him Bernie Sandinista, because he wouldn't even take that back. Yet on the other hand, the top of Drudge you'll see today, U.S. Small Business Optimism Index surges by the most since 1980. The National Federation of Independent Business looked at this and they said, this is a jump of 7.4 points in just the last month, the highest since the end of 2004 from 98.4. They said this is the most confident small business has been since 1980. Why? Because we got somebody that understands that the government doesn't create jobs. I mean, Donald Trump has run businesses his entire life. He's a businessman, and that's one of the things that is really key as we look at these lines of attack that are coming up with conflict of interest. We don't want to have people who have been politicians all their life, who've been lawyers all their life, who've been community organizers all their life. Those people are going to regulate you to death. That's all they know is laws and rules. They never think about the consequences. They never pay any attention to the consequences. So we now have somebody who knows what it's like to be regulated to death. They know the struggles that everybody has. He's spoken to it, and I think he truly does understand that and is going to do something about it, and everybody else does. That's why we have such high consumer confidence. That's why we have such high confidence from small businesses, because it's small businesses that bear the brunt of the regulations. As a matter of fact, it's usually the big business and it's usually the established businesses that are screaming for regulation because they want to keep small competitors who might be disruptive, who might do a better job than them. They want to keep them out of the market. They want to saw off the bottom rungs of the ladder of success. That's the whole point of most regulations, especially at the state and local level. Now, we're going to be right back in just a moment, and we're going to have Alex Jones talking about the attack on the press. Stay with us.
The last few months, I have made the point ad nauseum that when you have mainstream dying dinosaur media and basically the entire executive branch hijacked by the Democratic Party and offshore interest, running around constantly claiming that the Russians are the reason the public hates them so much, and signing legislation to put the CIA over the Board of Governors of the Federal Communications Commission, you know you're in a very, very dangerous climate for the First Amendment. Now, we've seen unprecedented persecution of the press under Obama. Hands down, the worst president ever. That's why it was so rich to see Meryl Streep come out and say that there was this persecution of the press by Donald Trump with no evidence because he, quote, made fun of somebody. Well, that's called his First Amendment, Mrs. Streep. But now we see a Business Insider article asking, why is Drudge Report under attack and who is behind it? And pointing out that since late December, the site has been up and down, and that Drudge himself has come out and said it's the biggest DDoS attack in his 20-plus year history. Now, notice that follows on the heels of a few weeks before that when we had the biggest DDoS attack of our history that is still, by the way, ongoing, intermittently. And we have one of the companies that represents the top credit card companies, Walmart, you name it. There are three top companies. We have one of them signed as a contract for years and another as a consultant. And they said that the attack we're under is the second biggest they've ever seen. And when they say that they've ever seen, they mean in the history of the internet and what is known to be dealt with. What's happened to us is being studied by the FBI, you name it, because it was so many attacks, not just one, and not just one type of attack. So when you see press reports weeks after Drudge has been under attack still asking what's going on, it's been announced. They're saying they're going to, quote, attack Russian assets and Russian media and Russian allied media with cyber attacks and, quote, other measures at the time of their choosing. We've heard this from Obama. We've heard this from Hillary. We've heard this from McCain. We've heard this. And of course, it's asinine when you're an American patriot, have nothing to do with Russia, to sit here and watch this. But nevertheless, it's real. All they need is the political cover in Congress and at the Pentagon to give the orders out to do this. They can also farm it out. And we know that they farmed out to foreign, different multinational PR firms. They hired different bots during the election to go out and attack the free press as well, and to go out and attack Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump's been under massive attacks, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I didn't hear that from Trump. I heard that from the companies we work with. But they said the ones that we were under were even bigger, and that's because, again, these are just getting bigger historically. They're exponentially getting bigger with whoever gets hit by them. And that's why Drudge, who's never, called out for help or never called out to point out something's happening, has been coming out, is because it's unprecedented, and he is under attack. And isn't it funny, about 14 months ago, he came to Austin, Texas, isn't it interesting, and said next year, that was 2016, they're coming after the free speech. That's the year it all happens. He'd been told by a Supreme Court justice, the other conservative one that didn't mysteriously die. So this country is in a battle for its future. Everybody knows that, who's not hiding under a rock somewhere. But I just want to point out that this is a very, very serious time to be alive, and that everyone should not take free speech for granted. Now, our sources said this had to be state actors. A lot of the DDoS attack type systems we were under of this magnitude have been from the Communist Chinese in the past. 4 months ago, the Communist Chinese, and again 2 months ago, took credit for massive DDoS attacks all over the United States. So this appears to be something that comes out of them. But when Drudge says, looks like U.S. government or elements of it, they clearly have started to work with the Chinese sometimes, or green-lighted these type of attacks to happen against the American people. So Drudge seems to think it's the U.S. government. They've announced that that's what they're doing to a certain extent, and the Chinese are involved in unprecedented attacks. But the real reason I get to all this is we're witnessing a declared war against the press and against free speech in America. That's undeniable. And so to conservatives and liberals and just people who support free speech, period, everyone should be extremely vocal and upset right now. This is a big deal. When they arrested Dinesh D'Souza, the filmmaker, on trumped-up charges years ago, I said, this is wrong. This is a bellwether. This is a sign for other people. This is a canary in the coal mine. And they said, oh, you conservatives are just upset we're going to arrest you. No, I'd be upset if somebody arrested Michael Moore for his speech, okay? And I don't like Michael Moore, and I don't agree with much what he has to say. This is really common sense, folks. This is so draconian, so authoritarian. And we really see the de-evolution, the falling apart of the so-called left, from always having issues to now having no moral high ground whatsoever, and to really be a pathetic, but quite frankly, frightening group of delusional anti-freedom cult members. Now, that said, I'm going to go ahead and lay out something here, and I'm just going to leave it at that, but I need to put this out just in general for everybody's safety. I have been made aware of information dealing with this operation against the press in this country that goes far beyond cyber attacks. And so everybody just needs to understand that in my 20 plus years on air, this is the most dangerous escalation I've ever heard of. Now, we all remember the DNC staffer who got shot 4 times in the back, and his mother's gone public, his lawyer's gone public. In fact, we've had his lawyer on, and have talked about the fact that there's evidence of foul play. Well, obviously there's foul play, but evidence of the foul play linking to the Democrats and an ongoing cover-up. We've had, on top of it, Julian Assange come out and basically imply that Seth Rich is his source, or at least one of his sources. The information I have ties into that general area. And I'm just going to stop right there. But I'm going to tell you that it obviously affects all of us. All of us. Let me just be clear. When I say that, I mean all of us that are on the front lines of this situation need to understand that things have moved into a whole nother ballgame level, and that Hillary and the globalists have taken the gloves off. They're that evil, they're that arrogant, they're that crazy. Listen, look how sick and clearly nuts Hillary was But still, she thought that she could run as a corpse, just like Jeb Bush thought. So their greatest weakness is also their greatest strength, because bravado, arrogance can take you sometimes over the line of defeat or victory. And folks know that we break a lot of big news here. People know that I don't just say things here on air, and I have been admonished not to say anything, so I'm not going to. I should be able to soon give you the information, and I'm kind of just putting the big information into this larger report because that just feels best. A little Easter egg there for you of information. That quite frankly is a selfish Easter egg because I just really wish we could bring sunshine to this whole situation and turn this country and this world around. I mean, my God, the Democrats and Republican leadership are trying to start wars. They're behind radical Islam publicly. They're engaged in such deception in the media. They're just horrible, evil, wicked people like out of a cartoon. I mean, they're so bad, it's hard to believe. You know, you study history, there's always every generation totally crazy, whacked out, super evil people that are into badness and into hurting people and into just overthrowing beauty and goodness. So that's just the way it always works. It's up to us to stop them. But boy, let me tell you, I cannot wait to give you all this information. And I guess it's a good thing I'm on the road. I just hope everybody knows how real all this is, because it has gone to a whole other level. And these people can see the end of their days because of their own crimes, but they just hate all of us that are seen at the forefront of bringing their reign of terror to an end. All right, that's my report. I'm going to have more of these followed throughout the day. I'm Alex Jones for INFOWARS.com. Please don't take this broadcast for granted. Please pray for us, and please support the broadcast and spread the word, because I don't want to fight and have this all in vain. But regardless of what happens to us individually in this fight, humanity will prevail. That's God's promise. And so I want to thank you all, and just tell you I really appreciate you all, and I want to thank you for your prayers and support. We know what's happened to Drudge. He's under attack like everybody else. It's part of the testing, the end of free speech. It's part of the censorship being announced everywhere, both governmental and corporate. It's part of the enemy that sees control of this country and much of the world, trying to maintain control. It's a modern war. Pentagon called the Cold War World War III. Well, this is the new 21st century world war, folks. It's economic, it's cultural, it's using borders, it's using refugees, it's using jihadis, it's using attacks on the family, and a lot of people have chosen to serve evil. A lot of people have picked the wrong team.
And again, that's Alex Jones. He's taking a well-deserved vacation, but even when he's on vacation, he doesn't take a vacation. He calls it because the events of the day are so compelling. And of course, one of the key things that's happening today is the beginning of the confirmation hearings. We're less than 10 days out from Trump's inauguration. And so the confirmation hearings have begun. Jeff Sessions, fittingly enough, is the first person to go before the Senate. And I say fittingly enough because he was the first person to stand up and support Donald Trump. Only time he's ever endorsed anybody in his entire political career for president. He endorsed Donald Trump and has been a very important factor in educating not only Donald Trump, but the American public about the dangers of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's not simply a trade agreement. It was a massive grab against our national sovereignty, setting up a multinational committee body that was going to be able to change at will that document, add whoever they wished. It was sold as a move against China. Well, they could have added China on day one to that if they wished. They could decide which industries and which countries were going to be rewarded and which ones were going to be punished. And so that was a massive, massive move towards globalism, removing our sovereignty, removing any say over our own destiny that we might have. So it was a very good thing that he explained that to the public, even though the Senate would not listen to him. Now today, the Wall Street Journal points out that as they're criticizing him over some hearings that he had decades ago, where he was criticized of some civil rights issues, Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania said the only vote that he regretted from his decades in Congress was his vote against confirming Mr. Sessions as a federal judge in 1986, because he had since found him to be egalitarian, he said. And I guess, Arlen Arlen Specter. He was the guy that put forward the magic bullet theory for the JFK commission. I guess he didn't regret doing that, putting out that bit of fanciful farce for everybody. But still, over time, people have come to understand who Senator Sessions is, except for Cory Booker. Well, Cory Booker knows who he is, okay? Cory Booker will testify against the deeply troubling political views, he says, of Senator Sessions. He says he's repeatedly stood in the way of efforts to promote and protect Americans' civil rights. Well, that was actually a quote from Senator Patrick, who previously said that Sessions was wonderful to work with. See, these guys, this is nothing, folks, but politics that they're putting out here. And Sessions says, you know who I am, you know what I believe. And then he came out and said this about law enforcement. This is one of the reasons why so many law enforcement organizations like Sessions. He said, law enforcement as a whole has been unfairly maligned and blamed for the unacceptable actions of a few bad actors. They believe the political leadership of this country has abandoned them. I think that's a fair characterization of what we've seen. And of course, we've seen some outrageous things from the police in certain areas. We've also seen some reports of things that looked very outrageous that when all the evidence came in, the police were exonerated. But the problem is that when we have this overreach that has been encouraged by Barack Obama and others, the true people that need to be purged from the system are not purged from the system. And so that kind of injustice remains. You know, we had Frank Serpico, who talked about corruption in New York City. And he said, look, any organization that you have is filled with people. You're going to have good people, you're going to have bad people. And so the question is the organization going to become better or worse over the period of time? And it becomes better or worse depending on whether you tolerate the bad actors that are in your system or whether you purge them. Now, what Barack Obama and Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch have done is they have demonized all law enforcement categorically because they win by a divide and conquer strategy. They see everybody as groups. And so Cory Booker is coming out and he tells Roll Call, which is a insider publication of Capitol Hill, he actually came out to them and said, we've done the research and we can't find any other example of a senator testifying against a fellow senator in his confirmation hearings. We're going to be the first ones to do that. And they point out in their very first paragraph, they say, this is a move that could firm up Booker's progressive bona fides ahead of a possible 2020 presidential bid. Yeah, because you come out and you play the race card in an unprincipled way, that makes you the beloved representative of the left. Now, I want to play what Rudy Giuliani, who knows Jeff Sessions, said. Here's a clip of Rudy Giuliani.
I know Jeff Sessions for 30 years. This man is a completely honest prosecutor. Every one of those senators knows he's not a racist, and they're playing a game. The ones who come up there and do that are really being intellectually dishonest.
It is exactly what this is. It's intellectual dishonesty. It is playing a political game. It is doing it for his own personal political advantage. We should remember what Cory Booker did, and we should hold him to this when he runs for president in 4 years. I guarantee you that he's going to run for president in 4 years. Out of all the speakers that were at the DNC, and I was there covering that for INFOWARS, he was by far, I thought, the most charismatic speaker. And now he has shown that he has absolutely no moral integrity. He is an unprincipled opportunist, and that's exactly what the left is looking for, especially if he'll play the race card. You see, when people come out and they're constantly breaking people into groups, I think that is exactly the kind of leader that we don't want. Isn't that what they complained about with Donald Trump? And yet Donald Trump was not doing that. Donald Trump, when he talked about the situations that we had at the border, when he talked about how we had criminals that were being allowed to stay, we've now seen that put down in writing. We've had these amnesty groups in California say, let's hide the foreign citizens who are gang members here illegally in California. Let's hide those lists from Donald Trump because he might deport them. We don't want them deported. We want them to stay here, they said. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. We're going to be joined in the next hour with Roger Stone, and he's going to comment not only on the Jeff Sessions confirmation hearings, but the rest of the confirmation hearings that are going to be coming up very quickly, very compressed, because we've only got about 10 days left before Donald Trump takes the oath of office. So there's a lot of hearings that are going to be held. We're going to talk to Roger Stone about what's happening in Washington, and I've got a video I want to play for you in just a moment. Before we do, I want to remind you that we have a great sale at InfoWarsLife.com. Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative for 2017. If you're going to try to get yourself in shape, make sure that you start with good baseline supplementation for your health. If you're going to play around with your diet, if you're going to increase the amount of exercising that you're doing, you need to make sure that you've got the proper nutrition to put that there. And this is what you need to be taking a look at. And we put a massive sale on a wide variety of products that we have at InfoWarsLife.com. 30% off Brain Force, 30% off Super Male Vitality, 30% off Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, 20% off Secret 12, our vitamin B12. That's very important as well when you're exercising, trying to get in shape. Also, 20% off Liver Shield, Knockout, and Prostagard. And we have BioTrue Selenium back in stock after it's been sold out for weeks. This is a one-of-a-kind formulation. There's no question, as I pointed out earlier, there's no question that your body needs a supplementation of selenium. You need to make sure that you've got that trace element in your diet. But the question is, are you going to get a good source of it? What is the best source you can find? Well, we have come up with BioTrue Selenium that is made from a 100% organic source mustard seed. That's where ours comes from. Most of the selenium supplements on the market are produced with synthetic selenium. Ours is 100% organic mustard seed. It's where it comes from. And of course, this is something that, as I pointed out, is very essential to your supporting your thyroid gland, your immune system, DNA production, and eyesight. And that is now back in stock. It's been sold out for weeks. You'll find that at InfoWarsLife.com. That's BioTrue Selenium. Now, there's an article on LifeSet pointing out Democrats look to be helpless as Sessions heads to the Hill. Here's why they're most likely going to be helpless. Let's play this video.
They invoke what's known as the nuclear option. It kills the Republican threat of a filibuster on most presidential appointments. But the bigger message behind the move is clear. Democrats and this president have gone to war with their enemies finally.
This is a move Democrats had to make. Republicans put them in a position where basically Republicans were saying we are not going to honor the power of the president.
All this really does is say that the president that we elected to actually run the government gets to run the government.
Once the majority is blocked all the time on relatively ordinary things, it's not going to tolerate the protection of the minority.
Ted Cruz is sort of exhibit A for why the Democrats and why Harry Reid did what they had to do.
What we had in the Senate, which likes to call itself the world's greatest deliberative body, we had paralysis instead.
I think the escalated use of the filibuster has more or less made it obsolete.
On the other hand, the actual history of how the filibuster is used is mostly nasty, ugly, and racist.
I don't see what other political options there are, what other procedural options there are.
So deciding to allow majority rules to incrementally increase governmental efficiency in presidential appointments is so unthinkably extreme. It's the nuclear option.
They are presenting the picture to the American people that the United States Senate was running as smoothly as it possibly could.
Right, and the United States Senate was in fact paralyzed.
John McCain said there are now no rules in the Senate. No rules. Actually, now majority rules, you know, almost like a democracy.
I think, frankly, Ray, it's long overdue.
Even just the reaction to this announcement seems to be one more piece of evidence that, you know, this Republican Party is not interested in doing the business of the country.
There you go. That's from the Washington Free Beacon.
Well, sure, there's no question that we could come one day to regret this.
Yeah. Well, that was 2013. Now the day that they're going to regret this is 2017. Because all this talk about majority rule, yeah, they're going to get it. They're going to get it good and hard. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Roger Stone joining us in the next hour to break this down further. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we'll have Roger Stone join us to talk about the confirmation hearings that have begun with Jeff Sessions. And you just heard in that last clip the Democrats crowing about the fact, hey, we got the power we're going to use. We're going to shut down filibusters, and we're going to go with a simple majority vote. Well, now they're going to get a simple majority vote, an up or down. And as they say, Democrats are helpless as Sessions is heading to the Hill. That's a LifeSet story. You know, they may not be able to stop them, but that's not what this is about. This is about them grandstanding for their audience. It's about their posturing for their political tribe, because that's exactly what Cory Booker is doing, and the rest of these people like Pat Leahy, they know better. They're just being very dishonest, very political, trying to endear themselves to the choir that they preach to. So we're going to go to that news when we come back from the break. And of course, in the third hour, we're going to be talking to the man who invented email, which led to Hillary's downfall, among other things. Our debt of gratitude for him. But he also is a biologist, PhD biologist from MIT, and he discovered some very troubling things about genetically modified food sources, and he's going to break that down for us as well. And there's a connection between those two. They are not completely disconnected, and he's going to tell us how his struggles to make sure that they didn't deny him being the person who had invented email. He's going to talk to us about that because it's all related to the military-industrial complex, just like so many of these technological inventions are. They want to take credit for everything that is good, and of course they're sliding a lot of stuff under the mat that isn't good. Now, as we look at the influence of technology on our lives, I thought this was kind of interesting. You may not have realized this, but the Marshall Islands have been offline since the end of December. They've gone the entire year so far, 2017, without the internet. Now, some of you might think that's a good thing if it keeps them off of Facebook. They say an internet blackout in the Marshall Islands has caused widespread symptoms of withdrawal in a population that's used to fast internet speed. The interesting thing about this is they got underwater cable put in by the U.S. military. I wonder what the military is using. They say they've reverted to a satellite backup, but they're only getting 3% of the bandwidth, which means that they're having to ration internet usage between businesses and customers and government customers on a rotating basis. People have given up social media on a cold turkey basis. And so they say that they think they're going to get it back, but it's very difficult for them to find where the problem is. They said it's like finding a pinprick on a 3-mile stretch of fiber optic cable. You often don't, and here's what's interesting about this. You never think about how fragile our infrastructure is until you see something like this. That's why I brought it up. It doesn't affect most people. Most people didn't realize that the Marshall Islands have been offline for 10 days or whatever, except for the people in the Marshall Islands. But the more complex our society becomes, the more easy it is for us to have catastrophic disruptions. And when you start to think about what they're laying out here, as they connect everything together with the Internet of Things, of course, that creates surveillance and privacy issues. We have cars that are now being put on an information highway that is actually going to be used to spy on you. It's going to be used to tax you. It's going to be used to track you. But the other part of this is that it's also creating a very high-tech, very fragile infrastructure. And when you put all your cars on a self-driving basis, then you're going to have a situation where you could have something like this very easily happen. And here they've gone 10 days and they can't find where the break is on the cable. It seems to me like they could have replaced the 3-mile stretch of cable in that amount of time. I don't know what the technical issues are on that. But of course, as we look at the self-driving issue, there's a story up on Drudge Report talking about the end of car ownership. Of course it is. That's what they've been talking about for a long time. The corporations are seeking to rent to you. The government wants to tax and track everything that you have. And so that's why they're pushing this on. It is also an issue we need to think about, not only about our freedom. Many people look at this as just transportation versus recreation. No, it's really about your freedom and your independence. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Roger Stone about the confirmation hearings. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. Roger Stone is going to be joining us in a moment. The lead up to the Trump administration is beginning, and now the hearings on Capitol Hill are beginning on his nominations that he's put for cabinet. The first one up is Jeff Sessions. We're going to be talking to Roger Stone about what he sees coming up. As the Hill points out, these are going to be coming thick and fast. There's not much time. We've only got about 10 days or so before Donald Trump is inaugurated. And they say that, of course, tonight we're going to have the farewell address from Barack Obama. He's going back to Chicago. Usually the president gives a farewell address in Washington and then goes home. But see, Obama isn't going to go home. He's going to stay in Washington. So he's going to go to his old home and talk about how great the last 8 years have been, and the city that has had, in his last 8 years, about the same number of people shot and killed in Chicago as Americans who died in Iraq under George W. Bush. That's his accomplishment. And that's just domestic war. Okay, he's put the black people and the police at war with each other. He's put blacks at war with whites with each other. He has created this kind of unrest here at home. He has authorized indefinite detention without trial. He's just authorized the State Department being used as a propaganda master, a ministry of truth, giving them $160 million over 2 years to vet what's true and what isn't. And, of course, he's been joined in all of this by the people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham, those political hacks of the military-industrial complex. They've been there right alongside him with all these and with all these foreign wars that he's involved in. He's kept all the wars of George W. Bush. He added another 3 of his own. And now we've had, we're at war, this Nobel Peace Prize president that we've got. We're now at war with 7 countries. And he has been at war the entire administration that he has. Perpetual war. It is 1984, folks. That is the legacy of Barack Obama. I want to take a quick look at a couple of news items that have come out here. The Guardian is pointing out that there is a trail of slaughter in prisons that is shocking Brazilians as they have gang wars exploding within the prisons. And I bring this up because it highlights the fact that we can't solve all of our problems in society. Most of our problems cannot be solved by adding more law enforcement, by adding more prohibition. You see, people are still dying of overdoses and drugs. And even though the prisons are a gun-free zone because they have prohibited guns for prisoners, people are still dying there. And they're dying there in gang wars. And at the same time, we've got California accusing Donald Trump of being a racist because he said we've got to get the criminals that have been allowed into our country, foreign citizens who are here illegally, we've got to get these people out of our country. They say, oh, you're a racist. Meanwhile, California says, we're not going to let Donald Trump look at the list of gang members that we have compiled in California, the people who are foreign citizens here illegally and violent gang members. We're going to keep that from him because we don't want him to throw them out of the country. We're going to go to a report that we've got from Alex Jones because Glenn Beck was on Tucker Carlson's show yesterday. A very interesting report that went back and forth between the two of them. Of course, Tucker called him out on identifying Ted Cruz as being the Messiah, but Beck denies that. That's something we really can fact check. And believe me, we will. We'll show you the clips of that. But let's take a look at Alex's report on Tucker Carlson's interview with Glenn Beck.
All right. I am so sick of looking at Glenn Beck. I am so sick of hearing Glenn Beck. I like Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson has the, quote, big primetime slot on Fox News. And I think that signifies the fact that the coup against Fox News to put in even more globalist operatives like Bill O'Reilly and Megyn Kelly failed. But that said, I want nothing to do with Fox News. To be clear, because they had some vice president once tell the New York Daily News that I asked for a job at Fox and I didn't get one. And that really makes me mad because they want to act like they're the Emerald Castle, they're where the yellow brick road ends, and that I'm Toto and I want to go there. No, I don't, okay? I have my own audience. It's huge. Just like Drudge has his own audience. I'm trying to build something outside of them. We've done it. We've been successful. You go to a Donald Trump rally, a third of the shirts are INFOWARS.com and Hillary for Prison shirts. They're not Fox News shirts, okay? We're the future. And I don't say this meanly, but your future is selling more catheters and more diabetic equipment because that's all you've got's a very old audience. Nothing against them, but the point is, you're the past, we're the future. And I know the Murdochs are globalists and are the scum of the earth. And so I understand that I can't ever trust Fox News. That said, it's a hell of a lot better than, say, CNN or MSNBC. Now, that said, I go to InfoWars.com this morning, and there's a big article up there by the great writer from Intel Hub, great folks. I don't mind it, but it still kind of irritates me. It's like, oh my gosh, Glenn Beck says, half the nation is upset about Trump. And he hopes that Trump has a good presidency, and he can't wait to see how things go. This is so sick on many levels. It's like saying, Glenn Beck said that the grass is green and puppy dogs have fur and bark and the little pink tongues. Of course, half the country, or 40-something%, is brainwashed and hates Trump. My gosh, tell me something I didn't know. And then again, what is this failure who's made these apology tours all over ABC, CBS, NBC, apologizing for conservatives, apologizing for gun owners, apologizing for Donald Trump, trying to sabotage this country, leading the Never Trump movement, going around being this apologist who, quote, is an insider and admits that the liberty movement's really bad, and he apologizes to the left, a total Judas goat. Then he goes on Fox News and sits up there and acts like he's now pro-Trump, trying to rehabilitate himself. Hey, Megyn Kelly at least had the class to leave to NBC, knowing her viewers and listeners hated her guts. It's even worse with you, Beck. Go away. You are incredible. And again, I'm not in competition with you. I don't bash other major talk show hosts. I'm sick of you. I know what you've done in talk radio. I know what you've done behind the scenes with sponsors. I know how you've been out to get me for like 8 years, out to get Ron Paul, out to get Donald Trump, out to get everybody. You are bad news. In fact, you're so bad news, my listeners even get mad at me when I talk about you or bash you, because they don't want to hear about you. Well, believe me, I don't want to hear about him either. So here's the deal. I don't mind the fact that Glenn Beck's on INFOWARS right now because we can have a debate about it. But I am sick of this garbage. This is out of control. You know, I haven't asked to go on Tucker Carlson because I know better. I know that Fox News basically has me banned. That's fine. I've been banned since I refused to go up there and be part of pilot TV shows with them. I got banned since I refused to go on their shows and would send surrogates. I mean, I was sending surrogates to Fox News 10 years ago. 10 years ago on Mancow's show and others. I want to point out, I don't want Fox News. But what's crazy is, did I get invited on even to say no? No. Would I go on Carlson's show? Sure. The point is, what is this guy, this has-been phony super fraud, doing on Tucker Carlson's show? It's disgusting. And Carlson can do whatever he wants. All I care about is the fact that he promotes freedom. I think he's taking Fox News in the right direction. But I have my free speech to say, disgusting, man. I mean, I can't even listen or watch him. He is such an oxymoron. He is such a joke. Here's a clip, as we go back to the broadcast, from the visit by Glenn Beck last night. I mean, this guy's ratings are in the tank. His sponsors have left him. Believe me, I know. I'm in talk radio. He is getting kicked off stations everywhere. We're exploding. And again, I'm not in competition with Beck, but man, you know, he's like it's like I'm a castaway out here in the ocean. He's this shark that's been following me for 8 years. I mean, he's been in my grill for 8 years, 9 years. I am so sick of him. Leave me alone. I can't stand him. He's constantly attacking me. He's constantly lying about me. He's constantly backstabbing the liberty movement. I just cannot stand him. I think he's a bellwether. I mean, if we can't get rid of Glenn Beck, and by get rid of him, I mean just have him absolutely go away because nobody listens to him, then shame on us, okay? Glenn Beck is our stupid meter. And the fact that he even has any audience and is still around, I mean, he's worse than Megyn Kelly. What on earth is this piece of filth doing? Good God. I'll throw up.
What do you think Trump will make? I don't know. I'm excited to see. I think the appointments that he has made, some of them are good. Some of the things I'm concerned about, but I haven't said anything, or I've tried not to say anything negative about him since the election. I've tried, unless there was something that was important to say. I want to see the man in action. I gave him the same thing that I said about Barack Obama. The election is over, and we fought hard, and that's the time to fight hard, at the primary and then the election. Now he has to be all of our president. And the last president, I don't feel, ever reached out to do that. I have seen on the very first night Donald Trump reached out. I've seen him reach out to people. I wouldn't have invited Al Gore to my office. He has reached out. And I think it's really unfair to judge him now on what he did on the election. I have concerns about the way he ran his campaign. But now let's see if the office changes him and he is the guy everybody who supports him says he's going to be. I hope he is.
Yes. Have your politics changed in watching all this? I've watched things that you've said in the last couple of months. You did a pretty widely circulated interview with Samantha Bee, and I read people say, well, Glenn Beck is changing his views. Have your political views changed?
No. I'm a libertarian. I have always been about principles. When I started the 9/12 Project, it was about values and principles. I think this election became about winners and losers, and I understand why Hillary Clinton, and the press doesn't seem to get this yet. They're still trying to figure out why Hillary Clinton lost. She lost because she was a horrible, dishonest candidate, and even the people who were raising money for her would say, I can't believe I'm raising money for her because she's so dishonest.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're going to be going to Roger Stone in just one moment. Before we do, I want to remind you that we now have back in stock BioTrue Selenium. There's no question that selenium is an essential trace mineral for your health. It is important for supporting the thyroid gland, the immune system, DNA production, and eyesight. And so the question is, how good is your source of selenium? Ours is made from 100% organic mustard seed. Nearly every other selenium supplement on the market is produced with synthetic selenium. That's what we try to do here at InfoWars. We try to bring you the very best quality products at an affordable price. And when we're out of stock for a few weeks, it just highlights the fact that if you're going to set up a baseline set of supplements and minerals and vitamins for your health, you need to make sure that you're signed up for auto ship. That helps us to even out our supply chain. We try to pass that savings along to you. We give you a 10% discount when you sign up for auto ship. And if you sign up with shipments that are $50 or more, you get those shipments for free. So it's a massive discount, a massive incentive for you to help us with our purchasing decisions and also make sure that you never run out of the essential things that you have determined you need for your health. Take a look at the reviews at InfoWarsLife.com. There's a massive number of 5-star reviews from our listeners. It's very important to get a good source of selenium that is now back in stock after having been sold out for weeks. And of course, we also have the 2017 Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative. We put a number of key supplements on sale. We got 30% off Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2, that's nascent iodine. We also have 20% off our B12 formulation, Secret 12, off of Liver Shield, 20% off of Knockout and Prostagard. You can find all of that at InfoWarsLife.com. Joining us now is Roger Stone, no stranger to those of you who listen to InfoWars, and we appreciate Roger coming here because I've heard he's been sick. And Roger, you look like you've lost a bit of weight as well. How are you feeling?
I'm doing much, much better. Thank you, David. Yes, through the holidays and for some period, I have been extraordinarily ill. Some kind of intestinal virus. And in all candor, I'm starting to feel pretty good, but I attribute some of that to Silver Bullet, the Silver Colloidal formula that's in InfoWars, and also Brain Force. And the reason I say that was because it was in this exact period that I had to be working on my manuscript, which I've now just turned in for The Making of the President 2016, how Donald Trump orchestrated an American revolution.
Yeah, that's going to be a great book.
But I mean, for some period of time, I had a fever for almost 10 days straight. I had night sweats. I couldn't hold down food. And I really believe that a lot of bed rest, a lot of fluids, that they ultimately had to hydrate me with an IV. Wow. But I still think that the InfoWars products allowed me to kind of bounce back as I have. The deep cleanse was a very important part of this because, I clearly had a virus I had a hard time shedding. Anyway, I'm glad to be with you.
Well, I've had the same type of experiences. I've got younger children at home, and when they bring something home, I was always the first one to get it out of the rest of the family. And now I'm the last one to get it, if I get it at all, because I take all these supplements. It's very important to have that baseline in your diet. And again, as you point out, Silver Bullet, colloidal silver, that's very important, yeah.
Well, and when I was trying to button up this book, which I think is going to be a blockbuster because there's a lot of inside information here about how Donald Trump pulled off the greatest political upset in American history and the role of the alternative media in that and why we've reached a tipping point in the country. I also had to produce my 11th annual Mr. Stone's International Best and Worst Dressed list. Now, this is a custom that I picked up from the late Mr. Blackwell. You may remember him. He was a Beverly Hills columnist, designer, arbiter of fashion.
Now, before you go any further, was Meryl Streep on the list?
She was not on the list.
She's overrated in the way she dresses.
She was not on the list, but for the first year, Owen Schroyer of INFOWAR was on the list.
Yeah.
And David, with all due respect, few people look as good as you do in a waistcoat, so I think you're a contender for next year.
Okay, I'll aspire to that next year when we come along. Now, what's coming up this week, we've got it jam-packed with confirmation hearings in Capitol Hill. You've always got your nose to the ground, your ear to the ground, I should say, not your nose, but your ear to the ground in Capitol Hill, knowing what's happening there. Let's start out with Sessions when we come back from break. And I want to get your take on Jeff Sessions, your take on what's coming up, and the likelihood that all of these people are going to get through, or if you think some of them aren't going to make it through. I'll be very interested to hear what you know from your sources in Washington and throughout the Trump campaign. When we come back, we'll be talking to Roger Stone about the confirmation hearings. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining us now is Roger Stone. We want to talk to him about the confirmation hearings that are coming up in Washington. Of course, Roger is working on a book that is talking about the Trump revolution, the thing that brought him to power, but it's essential for him to be able to do the things that he has promised as part of his campaign, for him to have the appropriate people in place. So I want to talk to Roger about what he's heard from those that he knows within the Trump campaign, those he knows on Capitol Hill. What is the likelihood of these various people getting confirmed? Is there anybody, Roger, that you're concerned about getting confirmed? As we look at Sessions and even the obvious political attacks on him by people like Cory Booker, who are trying to feather their further career. We know that he's going to run for president in 4 years. And so this is something that he's doing to the choir that follows him. This is a political tribal move that these people are making. They know that Jeff Sessions is not a racist. Anybody who has looked at his career, anybody who knows him knows that. And even the people who are attacking him right now have said in the past what a great guy he is. But for political points, they're attacking him now. I don't think that's going to stop him. Most people don't think that's going to stop him now in the confirmation process. Do you agree with that? Do you think there's anybody that is vulnerable in this confirmation process?
Well, first of all, David, I think you have to look at the situation in context. The political establishment harped on the popular vote. They harped on the question of recount in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, none of which had any basis in terms of irregularity. They harped upon trying to badger and threaten electors to not vote for Donald Trump. But worse than all of that, they have continued this relentless Russian hacking canard past its due date. Now, the Democrats, John Podesta, the Clintons, we heard this theme loud and clear that the Russians were behind WikiLeaks, that they were responsible for this attack on Hillary. It was not true then. It is not true now. The extraordinary lengths that the intelligence services have gone to construct a myth is disturbing. In other words, if one will look at the hearings run by John McCain, what you will really learn if you read and listen for the fine print is an assessment of the situation. Says Putin ran the show and they hacked our election. And another point, they tell us that members of the committee were briefed. No Republican on the House or the Senate intelligence committees, all of whom are allowed to see classified documents, have seen no irrefutable proof of this. The few documents that were attached to this special report that was prepared for the president showed that RT attacked Hillary on their Twitter feed a year ago. So the New York Times particularly Scott Shane, an investigative reporter, CNN. But the truth is, and nobody wants to say this, is there is no proof. We have an allegation. And when you have people like John Brennan, the CIA director, a man who converted to Wahhabism, the most extreme form of Muslim, a man who refused to be sworn in with his hand on the Bible, a man who I believe cleansed Barack Obama's passport file, this guy with a long association of Communist Party activity, this guy is a thug with a motive. Yeah. Mike Morrell, the former acting CIA director, they roll him out to continue the Russian canard. Morrell covered up the lies of Benghazi, and he's now on the payroll of some Clinton-connected PR firm.
And of course, he became CIA director, acting CIA director, after Patriots was taken out for his security lapses. And so he then turned around and supported Hillary Clinton, even though it showed that she had thrown national security under the bus in a very careless, haphazard manner. But this is a guy who's always been a never-Trumper, Mike Morrell. And so that's very disturbing to see that from the CIA.
Yes, well, and Trump and WBAI in New York had an excellent report the other night about Trump's plans to reform the intelligence services. These rogue agencies need to be reined in. They don't want to. They want to continue to lie and murder and break federal law and break their charter, as they have, ad nauseum. They lied about Benghazi. They lied about Vietnam. They lied about the Kennedy assassination. They lied about Iran-Contra. They have lied about everything. Part of being a spy is the ability to lie. And either the intelligence services will control the president, or the president will control the intelligence services. So what really has these guys in high drive over this whole Russian canard is the fact that Trump threatens to clean up the whole shop. And that scares the daylights out of them, David. Just scares them to death.
And there's no limit as to what they will lie about. As a matter of fact, one of the former CIA officials went on CNN and accused Julian Assange of being a pedophile, and WikiLeaks wouldn't have any of it. They immediately came out and said, you better do a retraction within 24 hours or we're going to come after you. And they did something of a retraction. But it's just, that's the kind of lies that we see being thrown out there by these politicized intelligence agencies.
All of the charges of sexual misconduct against Julian Assange are manufactured.
Yes.
This is a hallmark of British intelligence.
The honey trap.
The woman who very clearly had consensual sex, or may have had consensual sex, later remembers that she was assaulted, and she's an asset with a long record. So please, it's tedious. Number one. Number two, again, John Podesta alleges before the election that Roger Stone must have known in advance that his email was being hacked, based on a tweet in which I said that specifically his time in the barrel would come soon, meaning his business activities would soon be exposed, as Paul Manafort's were in a furious smear campaign by the Clintonites. This refers to an article I published at the Stone Cold Truth about money laundering, the Russian mob, and Mr. Podesta. None of this information comes from WikiLeaks. Those are unrelated matters. Secondarily, Mr. Podesta and his friends continue to maintain on Twitter every day that because I predicted that on October 5th, Assange would begin releasing information devastating to Hillary, that meant I knew what the nature of it was and what his exact schedule was. I also knew through an intermediary that I've been very frank about, that whatever Assange had was unspecified political dynamite. I did not know whether it was related to the Clinton Foundation or Podesta or anything else. So these two tweets prove nothing. They do not prove advanced knowledge by Stone. But try going on Twitter, and you'll see Brock and these other maggots just in their bots constantly. Stone tipped off his friend Donald Trump to Russian hacking of Clinton camp. False.
Yeah. They're very selective about what they want to put out. And, of course, everybody was talking about Manafort and lobbyist connections to Russia, but nobody talked about Podesta's lobbyist connections to Russia. And that's what you were talking about. You said, hey, people are going to take a look at Podesta's connections to Russia. And it was very well known. But they also put no credibility, Roger, in British ambassadors. We got the current British ambassador saying, hey, I had people in Washington tell me they were the ones who handed this over, that there wasn't a cybersecurity violation to get this information. Another former British ambassador said, I traveled to the United States and I was handed information about the DNC by somebody who was upset about what was happening with Bernie Sanders. He was a supporter of Bernie Sanders. He was upset about the corruption within the DNC. He said they handed that to me, but of course, they don't give that any credibility in the intelligence reports.
Well, I guess the real chutzpah to me, though, is that Podesta made these charges against me before the election, carried in primetime twice by CNN, that because of these two tweets, which I just explained, I had to know in advance that he was being hacked and that I had to know he was being hacked by the Russians.
Right.
After the election, he actually posted an op-ed piece at the Washington Post repeating this now recycled, tired, false narrative. They never give up. It's just not, none of it is true. I had no advanced knowledge of the specific items or focus of any Assange's material. On the 6th, he announced that he would be having disclosures once a week for 10 weeks. I was correct. He did have unspecified political dynamite. By the way, Assange himself went on the record in an interview, I believe, with Associated Press, saying as much himself only days earlier.
And of course, we've had William Binney, who's been on the show multiple times, the former technical head of the NSA, go on record yet again saying, no, I don't believe it was the Russians. I believe it was internal. We had Ray McGovern, who was with the CIA. He used to be the person who briefed the president, saying, I don't believe it was the Russians. I believe it was internal. So we've got NSA whistleblower. We've got CIA, former CIA also saying that. And then we've got all of the technical people who are laughing at this technical report that came out. We've had John McAfee say, look, if you look at this, they say their circumstantial evidence is a time zone stamp that looks like it's coming from Russia, looks like it was done on a Cyrillic keyboard, so forth and so on. He goes, only an amateur organization would leave those kind of footprints. If it really was the Russians and they would leave that kind of footprints, they're incredible amateurs. But then they even used an out-of-date, by about 1.5 years and 3 revs, an out-of-date version of malware to go in and get this information. And all of this ignores the fact that Guccifer 1.0 was able to get all the private emails of Colin Powell and George W. Bush and Tony Blair and everything without being a computer expert. He didn't have any state security apparatus behind him to hack all this stuff. He just guessed their passwords. It's not too hard to guess Podesta's password. His password.
Well, but they refuse to give up trying to flog this same horse. There just is nothing there. But I guess the point, to go back to your question, to frame this, is all of this shows how determined they are to do anything humanly possible to block Donald Trump and a reform agenda. So yes, Chuck Schumer, who's a bit of a carny barker, is going to do everything humanly possible to cast aspersions on and derail all of the Trump nominees. I expect a vigorous fight over Rex Tillerson, who I think is a brilliant outside-the-box choice. I mean, I actually saw where Trump was criticized for choosing the Ford Motor Company executive because he had a personal relationship with Vladimir Putin. As Donald himself said to me, that's precisely why you choose someone like him.
Yeah, he knows him.
It's time to start talking. It's time to start talking to see if we might have peace.
Yes.
In other words, Trump is very clearly the candidate of détente. He understands that these people have horrific weapons, as do we. And although communism may have fallen, this is the tinderbox that could set off World War III, or not. Hillary and her neocon buddies were clamoring for war. When I spoke at a New Yorker conference just before the election in October on the Lower West Side of Manhattan, which is, trust me, taking your life in your hands if you're a conservative. And the former Wall Street Journal editorialist Max Boot was on the panel, and he was drooling for war with the Russians. We have not narrowly averted World War II, although, David, even as we speak, Obama has moved special forces to the Russian border.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, so they keep stepping closer and closer to Armageddon. The question we have to ask,
and enacted some more sanctions against Russia as well.
Well, so we expelled 39 diplomats based on no proof that they hacked anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've been there the entire Obama administration.
We seized private property that they purchased under our system of laws and property regulation. So I'd call that an illegal taking, but I guess they have no rights since they're not American citizens. But it violates an American principle of private property.
I guess it's like civil asset forfeiture, right?
I presume.
Yeah.
You know, for 8 years, Putin kicks this guy's butt around the block. The reset's a joke. The line in the sand is a joke. And now suddenly he wants to be tough on Putin. Suddenly, with days left to go on his term. This whole notion that they keep saying, why is Trump so chummy with Putin? What is it with this bro man? He wants to make a deal for peace.
Mm-hmm.
He would rather spend money on our infrastructure than building a war machine to destroy each other 100 times over. It's
well, of course,
smart.
one of the things that concerns me, Roger, is the fact that, yes, this narrative is playing to their political base. It is posturing. It is enforcing this tribalism. And they're being very reckless in terms of tweaking the Russians' nose with this. And they want to come after Trump. But also, I think, Roger, they want to get their nose under the tent in terms of future elections and inserting Homeland Security into the voting machines that we have that are run throughout the various state jurisdictions. And that's a very troubling move that they have put here. I think that's one of the things that we all should be very alarmed at. Yeah, and I hope that Donald Trump, as he's said to reporters, he said, look, if you got something that is very important, we all know that computers are not safe. If you got something important, you write it down on a piece of paper and you deliver it with a courier. That's the way our elections ought to be run.
Yes, well, look, several things here. First of all, these individual computerized voting machines are very easily hacked,
yes,
and manipulated. To some extent, they are connected to a central server controlled either by the manufacturer or the jurisdiction who's using the machine. So are you networked enough to steal an election in one county in, say, Ohio? The answer is yes. It is possible. But all the machines everywhere are not networked to each other. So an enormous national hack and movement of votes is, I believe, a technical impossibility. When I raised these questions, Hillary Clinton and the left went crazy. How irresponsible of me. When they wanted a recount in Wisconsin, a $3.5 million recount, their only argument, David, was these machines are very susceptible to hacking and manipulation. No evidence whatsoever.
Yeah.
So this is a distinction that I think people are missing. Secondarily, in all candor, and Trump has pretty much said this, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Saudis, the Israelis, the Russians have most likely all hacked American political documents. Hillary Clinton was the one who left the gate open with an unsecured server. You can bet
that's right.
They all have that. I know for a fact that Turkish intelligence has the Huma Abedin, Anthony Weiner 650,000 email record because their intelligence service obtained it. So it is, it really is getting very old, and it is time for those who oppose Trump to recognize there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah. Well, the thing I'm concerned about is that they're throwing this narrative out there. They're not saying right now, technically, that our election machines were hacked, but that's what they're implying. And then they follow through to make sure that they do have access to all these machines at the local level. That's the real danger. We'll talk about that more when we come back from break. And we'll also ask Roger Stone, does Jeff Sessions get a vote? Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Roger Stone. We've got some more questions for Roger, not only about the confirmation technicalities, but also what's going to happen in the run-up to the inauguration. We've had a lot of people saying that they're going to get rough with the inauguration, that it's going to be a lot of protests. I want to see what Roger's heard about this. We also have coming up in the next hour, we're going to be talking to the man who invented email. I wish, I bet Hillary says she'd never heard of email, but he's going to be joining us, and what his specialty is biology, and he's going to be talking to us about some very troubling things he's found about genetically modified organisms. So we're going to be talking to him in the next hour. Before we do, think about your health at this moment. Think about the natural basis, the biological essential minerals and nutrients that you need to give your body what it needs to protect itself, to grow, to protect itself against toxic garbage that you find in your food, your water, your air. You're constantly under chemical siege, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about GMO, but also your body has certain essential nutrients and minerals, vitamins that you need. And of course, one of those is selenium. There's no question about that. If you look at all of the different studies that we've had about selenium, many people have done it. It's important to the immune system. It's important to your thyroid gland, to DNA production, to eyesight. The question is, what source of selenium to get? That's always a question. You look at these and say, well, I know I need this supplement or that supplement, but what am I really getting? Well, I'll tell you what you're getting at InfoWars. BioTrue Selenium is made from a source of 100% organic mustard seed. Most of the selenium supplements on the market are produced with synthetic selenium. That's not what we sell. So it's a great source of selenium. It's been sold out at InfoWars Life for several weeks now, and it's now back in stock. Also, we have put on sale several very important products for you to try if you're not currently getting them, or if you have tried them and you use them, this is a great time to stock up while they're on sale. We've got 30% off Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, and Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. We also have 20% off Secret 12, our vitamin B12 liquid formulation. Very easy to take, very easy to assimilate. Also, Liver Shield, 20% off, Knockout Guard, and ProstaGuard, all 20% off as well. You'll find many other things at InfoWarsLife.com. We really appreciate your support. We run these sales to encourage you to make 2017 a healthier year for yourself and for your family. Rogers, we were going to break. I had a question about Jeff Sessions. Since he's the first person who is coming up for confirmation, if he gets through, will he be able to vote on the coming confirmations for these other people that Trump has picked for his cabinet?
I think technically Jeff Sessions would remain the U.S. Senator from Alabama until the moment that he resigned the office, and most logically he would resign at the moment that he took the oath of office as Secretary of State. That's not the same thing as the day he would be confirmed by the Senate, by the way.
Right.
So I imagine that he could preserve his senatorial power, which gives him a very valuable forum if this turns into be a lynching.
Yeah. So he's going to be there for the rest of the confirmation hearings. That's very important.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Michael.
That would be my legal interpretation. Now, I would defer to, say, Judge Andrew Napolitano, some others, for an examination of those laws, but that's my impression.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really does make sense.
But I must tell you, David, I have known Jeff Sessions since he was active in the Young Republicans in Alabama at a time that I was active in the Young Republicans in Virginia, and just prior to a time that I became Young Republican National Chairman. Jeff Sessions is no racist. He does not have a racist bone in his body. He is a decent man who's a serious student of the Constitution.
I agree.
Who's deeply concerned about the fact that if we do not seal our borders, we are going to cease to be a country.
Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come right back, we're going to ask Roger what he sees coming up with the inauguration. Activists say they want to turn this into the biggest riot in U.S. history. Will that happen? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're talking to Roger Stone. In the next segment, we're going to be talking to Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. And he is the man who invented email, and he also has found some alarming information about genetically modified food. And so we're going to be talking about that in the next segment. In this segment, though, Roger, we've got an article from Michael Snyder's blog, and he's going to be joining us later in the week. He said activists are hoping to turn Trump's inauguration into one of the biggest riots in U.S. history. What do you think about this?
My own intelligence tells me that as well, David. The group Disrupt J20, which is kind of sits upon an umbrella group of lefty kook organizations, funded yet again by George Soros, directed yet again by David Brock. Same people who just spent $300-400 million losing the last election are just back at it again. And we know from our own intelligence that they plan to create a sense of crisis, a sense of violence, that they are going to be harassing Secret Service agents and other uniformed law enforcement officers, that they will be harassing visitors as they step on and off the metro, or as visitors attempt to attend an inaugural event. We know they're going to have roving protesters with drums seeking to drown out speakers at the inaugural events. They have geared up here in a stunning, I think, example of a get prop of astroturf, of phony disruption and their march against fascism and so on.
I think that's going to go over as well as all of their Trump protests went over. It's going to have exactly the opposite effect, isn't it?
Yes, but here's kind of the new information. The deplorable, which is on the evening of the 19th at the National Press Club. This is the people's celebration of the Trump inaugural. Alex Jones is speaking. I'm speaking. Jack Posobiec is speaking. The great Mike Cernovich is speaking. There'll be other Liberty Trump supporters. And we now know that groups have prepared to disrupt this party, that they plan to throw baggies filled with urine and bleach. Wow. That they will harass those seeking to enter the event, but that they have also gotten their hands on tickets, which means they will have quislings inside the hall. They are seeking violent confrontation. And then, as we saw in the election, the violence, of course, is blamed on Donald Trump and his supporters.
Oh, yeah. No matter what they do to people, no matter how they instigate it, it will always be blamed on Trump. I mean, they blamed that situation where those 4 black teenagers grabbed that mentally handicapped white guy and berated him. They blamed that on Donald Trump. So no matter how absurd it is, they will double down on that narrative.
Well, and in this case, look, the folks running the deplorable know what they're doing. There'll be very good security. This is going to be the event to be at. If you are, part of the Trump train. This is not where you're going to meet the other cabinet officers. It's not a $25,000 ticket event, but this is among activists the primo event. The left knows this, and they're going to seek to disrupt it. This could be extremely ugly. Yes, I think what they have planned is Chicago 1968.
Wow.
They're looking for chaos.
Yeah. It's a time where people who have worked really hard to make this revolution happen, it's a time that they want to have to celebrate. But I think the key thing that's going to come out of this is the distinction between Barack Obama and his Hollywood elite partying, the way they party, ball after ball after ball, and the fact that Donald Trump is very quickly going to get right down to business. I think we're going to see a lot of changes on day one. I think that's going to really show a distinction between Obama and Donald Trump. Thank you so much for joining us, Roger Stone. And we're going to be right back with Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, the inventor of email, and his warnings about GMO. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We had a story at INFOWARS a week or so ago about a new study that showed that GMO soy accumulates cancerous formaldehyde. Now, we're going to talk to the man behind that study. He is what many people call polymath. That is somebody who is an expert in widely diverse fields. Think about Thomas Jefferson, for example. He was all over everything. Well, Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai is one of those types of people. He has 4 degrees from MIT. He's a world-renowned systems scientist. He's an inventor. He's an entrepreneur. As a 14-year-old, he invented email. And Hillary Clinton wishes that he never existed at this point, I think. He gave her enough technical rope to hang herself publicly, and email has played a big part in her life. It's played a big part in our lives as well. It's a great invention, and he's the guy who invented it. Now, he's really, his core focus has been as a biologist, and he has developed a system, Cytosolve. He's a chairman and CEO of Cytosolve, Inc., and he does modeling of biological systems, and that has allowed him to, that's the basis of this study. So we're going to talk to him about these things, but there is a common thread. He is somebody who supports liberty, and he is somebody who understands the danger of the military-industrial complex. So we were warned about that by President Eisenhower, and we have seen that come true, and he talks about it in the same way that Eisenhower originally was going to talk about it as the military-industrial academic complex, and that's the way that Dr. Ayyadurai talks about it, because it truly does roll together academia in a very vital way into this whole aspect. But we got a lot of topics to start with. Let's thank you for joining us, Dr. Ayyadurai. Let's start with the email. Tell us how, as a 14-year-old, you came about to develop email. And, of course, there was just a recent lawsuit. We keep seeing Gawker Media turn up in these lawsuits on the losing side, and they just lost a lawsuit with you. So tell us about your invention, and tell us about the lawsuit with Gawker over this.
Yeah, thank you. Great introduction, by the way.
Thank you.
So I think the point is, email, I think the heart of it was not invented by the military-industrial complex. It didn't come out of the elite triangle of MIT or Silicon Valley or big industry. The fact is, I invented as a 14-year-old kid in Newark, New Jersey at a small medical college. And what I was fundamentally doing was solving a civilian problem. If you remember in those days, in many organizations, there was a thing called the inter-office mail system. It was how all organizations collaborated. At the heart of this inter-office mail system was a secretary. On her desktop was the inbox, outbox, folders. Underneath her desk was a trash can. On top of her desk was the address book. She would write a thing called a memo, and it had a very specific structure: to, from, subject. She would make carbon copies. Business essentially got done through the inter-office mail system. It wasn't simple exchange of text messages. So as a 14-year-old kid, I was one of those very overachieving kids. I was also good at, believe it or not, in sports. But I went off to NYU because I finished my math courses by the time I was a 14-year-old kid, calculus, and I was accepted into a special math program at NYU in the Cornell Institute of Mathematical Sciences. In fact, in a special computer science program where I learned 7 programming languages. After I finished that, my parents were afraid of me dropping out, and I got a job at a small medical college called the University of Medicine Dentistry in Newark. And I was given this task of converting that entire inter-office mail system, and I put the word on system into the electronic computer-based version, and I called that email, a term never used before in the English language. But not only that, I converted all those 100 features in 50,000 lines of code across a system of 35 programs, and it was used. It was successful. We charged for it. Hundreds of people used it in that entire university. And more importantly, what was interesting was at that time, the policymakers in Washington didn't understand software. It was only in 1994 could you even patent software. But in 1980, the Copyright Act of 1976 was amended so you could use copyright to protect software invention. So as a young 18-year-old kid when I was at MIT, I sent away for the copyright, and it was not a trivial process. You had to fill in a ton of paperwork, and I was issued the first U.S. copyright for email. Again, the only way to protect software. So I was officially recognized as the inventor of email. So not only did I create this electronic version of this entire system, called it email, but I also got the copyright. So the facts were essentially black and white. And I never sought, a penny for it, nor did I seek any type of fame for it.
Yeah, so let me interrupt you a second and say that's a very interesting thing, because now what we're seeing in technology with the copyrights, we're seeing very abusive use of the copyright system, where we have people say that they file these junk patents and say, well, I got an idea that you could put pictures on a cell phone, and then they'll hold up Apple and they'll hold up Samsung and all these companies and say, pay me royalties for this type of thing. You never sought to capitalize on that at all in that way.
Exactly. So between that period, 1980 to 1994, you could only use copyright, and only in 1994 did the Federal Court of Appeals allow the use of patents for protecting software. Now, we have to understand the whole notion of copyright or patents was originally done for independent inventors to protect themselves for a shortened period of time, and then it was publicly accessible. What's happened with the patent trolls is they've actually abused the patent system. Now, what's unfortunate about that is the big guys, Apple, Google, et cetera, have taken advantage of the patent trolls to say that we should completely eliminate patents, which means they want to make it trade secret, which would let the big guys essentially control all types of innovation.
Exactly.
And my belief is when we go back to the heart of what the founding fathers wanted, what the heart of freedom essentially was in innovation, was that independent inventors should be incented to innovate, like that 14-year-old kid I was in Newark. And there's many people like that. In fact, it was a 14-year-old kid who invented TV. Took him 60 years to eventually get recognition for that, who was Philo Farnsworth. But I think at the heart of this And the spirit of this was you have certain amount of protection to support independent innovation. And what's really happened is that much of the large entities have abused this patent trolls, and there's whole public entities, public corporations, which run patent trolls right now.
Sure.
But I think at the heart of it was innovation was really supported to support the spirit of creativity in this country, which was at the heart of why America's great.
And that's the key with everything. There has to be a balance. We do want to protect intellectual property, but then, of course, there's the patent trolls. But you didn't come at this as a patent troll. You came at this because you wanted to protect your reputation, and because also, as you pointed out, it's always the military-industrial complex that is trying to take credit for everything. And so you had this lawsuit that just recently got settled, $750,000 lawsuit you won with Gawker Media. Tell us about that.
Yes, so here was the deal. I went off to MIT after 81, 82 when I invented emails, between 78 to 81. Went to MIT, did a bunch of degrees, had a very prolific career, started many companies, made millions of dollars in other inventions. In 2011, when my mom was dying of a horrible disease called pulmonary fibrosis, in a suitcase, she'd left all of this material and gave it to me. And Doug Amick, who was a technology editor at the time, looked at all of this, and then he wrote an article called The Man Who Invented Email in Time magazine. After that, in February 16, 2012, the Smithsonian invited me and accepted all my materials. It was a big honor. The day it went into the Smithsonian, which should have been an occasion for celebration, in fact, of what America is truly about, what you see is this backlash from the academic elitist historians and the cabal of the military-industrial complex, who in those 35 years, when I hadn't really promoted myself or rewritten the history, that a defense contractor called Raytheon, and they had essentially created a false narrative that email came out of the military. What they had done was simple text messaging. In fact, we found a document clearly showing that they had no interest to, in fact, invent email because they thought it was impossible. And so as you're showing, Raytheon had essentially created this huge branding. So when my stuff went into the Smithsonian, it was like a new, skull being found in Africa, which completely changed the origin of humans. So they had to destroy it. So you see the fake news sites like Gizmodo, Gawker start calling me all sorts of names, horrible names, trying to destroy my reputation, all my 4 degrees at MIT, everything I'd done. So, in Boston, for example, I wasn't able to find any law firm to take this on because many of them had links to Raytheon.
Wow.
When Hulk Hogan, the beginning of this year, won, which was in a jury trial, a great case that Charles Harder represented, I called up Charles, and Charles took on my case. 30 days after I filed, Gawker claimed bankruptcy. And the irony, sort of the karma of this whole thing, was that I get appointed to be one of the co-chairs of all the unsecured creditors. So it was a big victory for us because the facts were so obvious. Gawker clearly didn't want to go to the jury trial. And frankly, I never cared about the money anyway. For me, it was one principle, my reputation. To call someone a fraud, a liar, and a fake when I was being 100% truthful is absolutely ridiculous.
When I hear this, what this reminds me of, Dr. Ayyadurai, is the struggle between Langley and the Wright brothers. And you're talking about how they wanted to take credit for this. And of course, the big airfield is named Langley Air Force Base, not Wright Brothers Air Force Base. Langley didn't make any progress in terms of creating an airplane because he was using the charts and the observations that people had recorded that were incorrect. The Wright brothers looked at it and they said, wait a minute, let's go back to square one. Let's do our own measurements. They came up with a system that worked. He never got anything to fly, and yet the government named the Air Force Base after him because he was president of the Smithsonian. He was connected within the government, but you got a couple of homeschooled bicycle builders who were the ones who actually made the first working plane, not the guy who was affiliated with the big military-industrial complex of his day.
Yeah, and I think in my case, I'm not saying that someone would not have created email, because the march of office automation and computing was coming together, but I was the first to do it. I created the entire system, got it working. In fact, we billed for it, people paid for it. The military was doing these little dinky text messages. In fact, this guy within the military, Ray Tomlinson, all he did was a 15-minute job to be able to attach text to a remote file. Raytheon has conflated that, the @ symbol to equal email. In fact, they made $240 million in 2014 based on this reputation.
Wow. Hang on, we're going to talk about that more, but we're also going to talk about what you have to say about GMO. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Dr. Sheila Ayyadurai. We've been talking about the fact that he was the developer of email, the original inventor of email. He was credited as such, and once he was credited, that got the establishment, especially the military-industrial establishment, very upset. They pushed back against him. They assassinated his character, and not in an effort to be some kind of a patent troll, but simply to defend his reputation, to defend his honor. He sued Gawker, the parent company of the publications that came after him, and he prevailed in that. But we're also going to talk to him about his research on GMO. He is a man who is an expert in widely different fields, and the field that he is stayed in, for the most part, the field that he got his PhD in is biology and biological engineering at MIT. So we're going to talk to him about what he's found in GMO. And of course, going back to this article again, there was not his study, but a previous study. Researchers in Egypt found that with GM soy, genetically modified soy, they had DNA fragmentation increased significantly. They had glyphosate-tolerant enzymes were found in the blood. And this toxicity increased at 30, 60, and 90-day levels as they fed rats this genetically modified soy. They also found the kidneys' biopathology increased. They found chromosomal aberrations in these rats that they were feeding genetically modified soy. See, it matters what you put in your body. It's very important. And we're not saying that soy is bad, but there's a different form of soy that is harmful, as we see in this study, and as he's going to talk to us in the research that he did. That's why we try to offer you the very best products at InfoWars. We now have our BioTrue Selenium that's been sold out, is now back in stock. It is made from 100% organic mustard seed. It is not a synthetic selenium. See, it's a difference. Not all selenium is the same. Not all soy is the same. GM soy is different from real organic soy. And GM corn is different from organic corn. And organic selenium is different from synthetic selenium. It is now back in stock. Take a look at that at InfoWarsLife.com. Also, look at the specials that we have for 2017 to get you off to a healthy start. We have anywhere from 20 to 30% off a variety of products. We have Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2, all 30% off. We have Secret 12, Liver Shield, Knockout, a natural sleep aid, and Prostagard, all 20% off. You'll find all of those at InfoWarsLife.com. Dr. Ayyadurai, before we get to genetically modified soy and your research on that, I want to finish up a little bit more on this email. As we're going to break, you were talking about the profit motivation that the military-industrial complex was getting by claiming that they had invented email. There was a profit motive in it as they were coming after your reputation, wasn't there?
Definitely. I mean, if you look at it, Raytheon, around 2009, post 9/11, the large defense contractors, many of them got involved in the cybersecurity business. It was a lucrative business. Today, it's around a $70 billion industry. Raytheon, around 2009, bought a company called BB&N, which was really in the acoustic business, and they rebranded themselves as the inventors of email. In fact, 7 days after I went to the Smithsonian, they actually created a website, or not they, but their surrogates, called the Internet Hall of Fame, and they award Ray Tomlinson the inventor of email award. The timing is not coincidental. But the reality was this $70 billion cybersecurity market was very lucrative. All the major defense contractors started the cybersecurity division, including Raytheon, and they rebranded themselves. If you look at their website that you showed up, they've since taken that down after we exposed this. The @ logo is almost like the Nike swoosh. They brand themselves as innovators, and they have their mascot. So when my stuff went to the Smithsonian, it basically was exposing their marketing myth. It's almost like they'll imagine exposing that Michael Jordan didn't shoot all of his baskets, that Ray Tomlinson didn't invent email. So that was really the economic motivation to attempt to destroy my reputation. And they use their surrogates in the academic historian community. In fact, when I gave my work to the Smithsonian, the agreement was they would display it for all young people in the United States to get inspired. To this day, the Smithsonian has not displayed my artifacts. In fact, the end of 2015, I met with the new secretary of the Smithsonian, David Skorton. And within 30 minutes of looking at the facts, he said, Shiva, you need to get an investigative journalist. He wrote to the head of the National Museum of American History, John Gray, and he basically, to his own boss, he basically said, we have no intention of displaying this. So this is a level of collusion that goes on in academia. Academia is not doing the work that it was meant to do. It does really the work of large corporations who funds them. So this notion, I think you've been discussing on the show, if you look at the East Coast elitist academics, the Hollywood people, these people have this liberal ethos, but they're fundamentally fascistic in many ways. And fundamentally,
hang on, we're gonna continue with that, and we're going to talk about how they use their position of authority to control our information. We're going to come back with Dr. Ayyadurai, and we're going to talk about the biology aspect as well. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Radio Show. I'm David Knight, and I'm talking to Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai. And as you heard at the beginning of that clip there, you heard President Eisenhower saying in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. But of course, he was also talking about universities. A couple of paragraphs down, he says, today the solitary inventor, and that's who we were talking to, Dr. Ayyadurai, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists and laboratories and testing fields, and in the same fashion, the Free University, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. He said the prospect of domination by the nation's scholars, by federal employment, project allocations, the power of money is ever present and gravely to be regarded. And so that is the fundamental thing. First, you see the solitary inventor like Dr. Ayyadurai. They come against him. As it had already been established, he was the inventor of email for monetary purposes, but also to establish their authority. Because argumentation from authority is the key way that they control the narrative. And so this is an issue not only about his invention, but it's also an issue about the military-industrial complex. And I want to talk about his next invention here now, which is his CytoSolve system. And of course, he is a biological engineer. He has a PhD in systems biology with the MIT Department of Biological Engineering. He has 4 degrees. He is a proficient in a wide variety of different issues. I want to talk to him about the GMO aspect. We've mentioned this and teased this earlier in the show. But one of the things that he sent to me was he said that in 2014, he saw in the MIT Technology Review a story titled, Buy Fresh, Buy GMO. And that got him thinking. Talk to us, Dr. Ayyadurai, about the essence of GMO. I think a lot of people really don't understand the difference between transgenic, genetically modified things and things that are just selectively bred, you know, because we've had massive genetic variation between, let's say, dog breeds, okay? Just look at dogs as one example. And that was done by selective breeding. That's something that's been done for thousands of years. But what we're talking about now is something that is fundamentally different. Transgenic can allow them to combine plants with animals. It can allow them to combine chemicals with plants or animals. It's very, very different. Tell us about this article, Buy Fresh, Buy GMO, and how that alerted you to the dangers that were being sold to us by academia.
Yeah, I think great observation, by the way, David. So, you know, when I saw that article, Buy Fresh, Buy GMO, you have to understand between 2003 and 2007, I went back to MIT to do my PhD to really create this new technology called CytoSolve, which would help us really model very complex molecular pathways using the computer. So in 2014, when I saw that, frankly, it was an ad. This is MIT's Technology Review, and it was an ad for GMOs. And as you read through that article, what you find is that there's this false narrative being created that the developing nations, for example, like Africa, India, we all must have GMOs because without GMOs, there's no way we're going to be able to produce enough food to feed the masses of the world. Right. This is sort of this narrative that goes on. By the way, you know, Henry Kissinger pointed out that if you really want to control people, it's not through oil, but control their soil.
Yes.
So MIT, as a part of this, you know, voice, was really essentially advertising GMOs. And so I said, you know, why don't we use CytoSolve, which we had published, which we had gotten all sorts of great feedback from all the major publications to really understand at the molecular systems level what's going on. Now, to the audience out there, to your point, David, it's a very important point. A GMO is where they take a gene from, let's say, from a fish, which has a certain property. Maybe it can withstand cold because of its skin, and they transfer it, let's say, to like a tomato. So this is not something that occurs in nature. Many of the mainstream publications, New York Times, et cetera, were essentially supporting fake news by these, basically these bogus scientists who were trying to convince all of us, oh, don't worry, genetic engineering or GMOs is no different than plant breeding or normal breeding that takes place in nature. In normal breeding, you have a full, interaction of all the DNA, not just one little gene. So this is sort of the big lie that got promoted. Don't worry, genetic GMOs are no different than full-blown breeding. But the reality is what occurs with a GMO by taking a gene from one species and putting it into another in a test tube doesn't occur in nature. So that's what a GMO is. That's why they call it genetically engineered foods or GMOs. So what we said was, why don't we really do a deep dive, use cytosol, this very powerful technology, by the way, which we've used to create new medicines, which has been published in Nature and Cell and cited there. Why don't we use this to understand what is going on? So what we did was we said, there had been some reports by some farmers in the Midwest saying that they had seen higher levels of formaldehyde in GMO corn. No one was able to understand the mechanism, so the traditional, conventional academics sort of poo-pooed it. So what we did was we said, why would that occur? So it turns out in all plants, all fungi, and all bacteria, there's a core molecular system called C1 metabolism. To keep it simple, plants, for example, take sunlight and they put together carbon to create what's called carbon metabolism. That C1 metabolism pathway, we went through nearly 11,000 papers across 6,000 research results using cytosol. We were able to combine all that and extract that, and we found the major molecular pathways of C1. That was published in paper one. Very, humbly, we published that.
And let's add here briefly, this is peer-reviewed. So these are peer-reviewed papers that have come through here. That's very important for the scientists to understand that.
And open access. You see, the old model of publishing has been a little old boys network, where in the major journals like Nature, in fact, Randy Sheckman, who won the Nobel Prize, he's come out against the big journals saying it's an internal cabal of who gets to publish. So, but we went to open access journals, which is you have peer review, but it goes directly to the masses, and you don't have to pay a fee to download. So we published that first paper.
And let me add one other thing too, because that also parallels what we've seen with the internet and with news. One of the ways that you can control the narrative, and we saw this when there were only a few networks out there. Just you're talking about, we had a parallel structure in the peer-reviewed journals. You've just got a few publishers, and what they choose to report and what they choose not to report can be a form of censorship. And so you were able to transcend that by going open source, going directly to the public, but still having it be peer-reviewed.
Yeah, in fact, the story, for example, Einstein never published any papers peer review. He thought the whole concept of peer review was ridiculous because if you're an innovator publishing something new, how can a peer even review that? He felt that it should go direct and let people make the decisions.
Yeah.
So, in fact, when one of his last papers, they said they wanted a peer review, and he said, give it back to me. So this whole notion of peer review has been created in some ways by the priesthood to control knowledge.
Exactly.
And they brand it as though they're the only ones who can decide for us who should read what. So,
I agree. And that's why I put that out there, because we have that priesthood every time we'll talk about something. Well, was that peer reviewed or was that not peer reviewed? And it's like, okay, in this situation, they were peer reviewed. So there you go. So let's move forward with that. Yeah.
I mean, I've published in peer reviewed. I have, those credentials. But the reality is this whole assumption is based on the average person is stupid, and we're going to tell you what you should even read.
Yes,
but that's it. It's a bigger discussion. But anyway, we published the first paper. The second paper, we literally took these molecular pathways that we've discovered from the literature, which people had done in experiments, and we converted them to mathematical models using cytosol, and we interconnected them. That was papers 2 and 3, and we showed there was, in the normal condition for all plants, that they normally, process carbon by a pathway where they do create formaldehyde, It's called a methionine and methylation pathway, but then they detoxify it. So in the normal case, all plants do create a little bit of formaldehyde, but they detoxify it. However, what we found was under certain stressful conditions, pollution, or when there's a drought, a plant will actually deplete its glutathione. I noticed in your commercial you talked about selenium. Selenium is an amazing mineral which actually helps, it's a precursor to glutathione. Glutathione is a very important antioxidant which helps break down formaldehyde. So what we found is in normal plants do create formaldehyde. They have enough glutathione to make sure formaldehyde is detoxified. However, under stressful conditions, the glutathione gets depleted and formaldehyde accumulates. So those were papers 2 and 3. In the 4th paper, what we did was we looked at GMO soy. I think the point you made is important. Not all soy is equal. 97% of the soy in the United States is genetically engineered. Monsanto created a version of GMO soy called Roundup Ready soy. It's a version of soy which can withstand their own pesticide called glyphosate or Roundup. So when you plant one of their seeds, their seed can also withstand their own pesticide. That's called Roundup Ready soy. What we found out in Roundup Ready soy, by the way, the way they created Roundup Ready soy was they took a gene from a different bacterium and they shoved it into the soy seed, in the normal soy seed. And that let it create another immune system to withstand their own Roundup. So anyway, what we found was when they inserted that new gene, it actually perturbs the entire C1 metabolic system and puts the plant into what's called oxidative stress. The plant actually thinks it's under stress, it depletes its glutathione and formaldehyde accumulates. That was paper number 4. When we published this, we were attacked by the pro-Monsanto surrogates, including a guy called Kevin Folta, who was the head of agriculture, the head of the Horticultural Institute at the University of Florida, part of the priesthood. He said, by the way, this guy didn't create email, and furthermore, his research is just a model. And he also said, I have nothing to do with Monsanto. As some of your viewers may know, subsequent to saying that, a FOIA was issued on him by a nonprofit group in the West Coast. 4,000 emails came out with a clear email from Monsanto to him, giving him $25,000 to be their spokesman. So
there you go. You got him with your own invention, email.
Exactly. So
4,000 emails between him and Monsanto showing that there was a connection besides the $25,000 that they gave him. So
yeah. So Folta has been exposed, and so it's funny. The irony is, the email is a tool that was used to expose him. Now, more recently, the end of last year, we published a 5th paper because people like the Folters were saying, "Oh, this is just a mathematical model." We went back in. And we actually focused on glutathione, and we were able to show that glutathione levels are nearly 300% less in the GMO soy. Not only that, we found research that was done 4 years ago in 2011, but a little bit longer than that, in Leeds and duplicated in Leeds by researchers who had actually grown the GMO and non-GMO soy in the greenhouse, and they too had found in the actual live plant 300% less glutathione. So what we're saying is we've been sort of told, oh, these plants are much more resistant to drought, et cetera, but it's actually completely false. What we're finding is that the GMO soy has 300% less glutathione. Let me tell you, glutathione is one of the most important antioxidants for cleaning up, detoxifying our body. So if the soy has 1/3 less, you can imagine what that means to the nutrient value. It gets even more interesting. Glutathione, our view is because it's less in the soy, even the soy's immune system is lowered. That's why many of the GMO seeds, they're coating them with a thing called neonicotinoids, which is a coating which protects the seed from soil organisms. So what you're seeing is the entire process of creating GMOs is completely screwing around with nature. So not only do they have created an organism which is less stronger, and then they have to coat it with another pesticide.
It's kind of like the laws that the government does. They create a problem that makes us more vulnerable, and then what they do is they double down with that with more laws that make us even further vulnerable. And I think it's interesting when we look at Monsanto, you're talking about how they start to go down this path. Where you began on all this, you said they're selling us GMOs, saying that's the only way that we can feed the population of the planet. And yet it's Monsanto that creates these seeds that you have to keep buying from them because they won't self-replicate. So they're actually creating a situation that would hinder our food supply for their own profits, aren't they?
Exactly. I mean, this entire process, is a very insidious process.
Yeah.
And the biggest so-called respectable people from the Gates Foundation, the big academics, are all behind this, right? So, you go to a place like Africa and India, you show bloated babies, and then you convince everyone they need, help from, it's a neo-missionary attitude. So we've gone into these developing nations, destroyed their soil, giving them sort of unidimensional types of crops, wheat and corn. And many of these countries had their own biodiversity. And then we forced them to buy GMO seeds because that's a new market for Monsanto.
Mm-hmm.
And as a part of that, we're selling the GMO seeds as well as the pesticides. And that's really at the crux of why there's a lot of these issues in public health in all of these countries, including our health. In fact, 2 days ago, a paper just came out in Nature showing that low levels of glyphosate Roundup cause, fatty liver. E.g., obesity, et cetera. This just came out in Nature. So at the foundation of all of this, when you go back to where I grew up in India, my grandmother was a traditional farmer, a healer. Traditional systems of health and nutrition were really based on using our food supply, natural systems, natural herbs to support us. And what we've done is, through the military-industrial complex, Monsanto and Dow, for example, as you may know, and they're the ones who created Agent Orange, which was to defoliate Vietnam. They took that entire infrastructure and reused it for delivery of Roundup and glyphosate on factory farms. So the military-industrial complex and their industries thrive on reusing the technologies they created for war in their secondary markets back in civilian life. That's why something like the invention of email, as you're showing the slide, perturbs this entire narrative, because the narrative is the golden triangle of the military-industrial complex is where all great innovation comes from.
That's right.
We should all bow down to that.
And that's why they wanted to discredit you. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Dr. Aya Dure. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Dr. Aya Dure, developer of email and exposer of what's going on with genetically modified soy and with other issues. And, of course, because of that, he was attacked. They tried to destroy his reputation. Because if they could destroy his reputation, they don't have to address his research that showed the harmful effects on plants, on soy, of GMO, the fact that it accumulated formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen, something we should be very concerned about. And, of course, the key mechanism they identified was the drop in glutathione. And as he pointed out when he's talking about this, selenium is a key building block in creating glutathione. So it's something that is very essential. That's why you have these studies. You can look at the mechanism, or you can just look at the studies that show that you need selenium for your health in terms of your thyroid gland, your immune system, your DNA production, your eyesight. We now have BioTrue Selenium back in stock. We make our selenium from a 100% organic mustard seed. It's not synthetic selenium. And as we pointed out earlier, there's a difference between the 3% of soy that is not genetically modified and the 97% that is genetically modified. There's a big difference. And there's a big difference in the selenium that you get as well. So you should understand not only what things you need that are essential in terms of trace minerals and other nutrients, but you should also take a close look at how these things, how they're made, so that you get a pure form of it, the best form that you can find. So we now have BioTrue Selenium back in stock. We've been sold out for several weeks. We also have sales on Brain Force, 30% off, Super Male Vitality, 30% off, Survival Shield X2. That is a nascent iodine. Again, look at the form of the iodine that you're getting. Many people don't get a lot of iodine anymore in the food that they're getting. This is a pure form of iodine, 30% off Survival Shield X2. Secret 12, a vitamin B12, another essential nutrient that you need, 20% off. Liver Shield, Knockout, Prostagard, also 20% off at InfoWarsLife.com. Dr. Aya Dure, I want to go back to what we've been talking about. And of course, as you point out, we talk about glyphosate and Monsanto. They genetically engineer, and they created these problems with the accumulation of formaldehyde because they've created soy that is not going to be affected by their glyphosate, okay, which is a weed killer. But when they spray this, indiscriminately, then this can go over and kill people. Even if people are trying to do something that is organic, their plants are susceptible to this because they haven't been genetically modified. They're susceptible to being killed by this. So we've seen this kind of damage that has been spread by this. And of course, I'm sure you're aware of what's going on in India. Farmers become indebted to Monsanto because they start buying GMO seed, and then that seed does not reproduce. They turn into debtors. They've had massive numbers of suicides in India. Speak to some of that for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're bringing up some very good points, David. It's an insidious cycle, right? So what they've done with the GMO seeds is they've made it into almost like a software licensing model, right? So if you and I are both farmers, let's say you're next door to me and you're not using Monsanto's GMO soy and I am, let's say, for example, one of my seeds happens to fly over onto your property, Monsanto will unleash their legal apparatus to force you to now license their seeds. Yeah. And in fact, you can be, litigated against and in fact suffer massive fines. In India, what's happened, with these, in India, a small farmer may have many kids. His entire livelihood is based on farming his plot of land. So in countries like India, many of these GMO producers have essentially experimented with GMO seeds. Some of them work, some of them quote unquote work, some of them don't. And these farmers become indebted to them. And the licensing model, as you said, is every year annual, you have to come up with more money.
Hang on, we're going to continue with that right after the break. We've got a short segment here, but we're going to continue with Dr. Aya Dure right after the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we have one more segment with Dr. Aya Dure. It's been very interesting talking to you, Doctor. You mentioned something as we were going to break, and that was how Monsanto was going to essentially a software licensing model where people would have to continually re-up and continue to buy their seeds every year. And we've seen this even from car manufacturers, truck manufacturers. I remember reporting on this about a year or so ago. Under the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, they said, we own the software that runs your car. So you farmers who are used to working on your trucks, you can't do that anymore. We own that, and you can't modify that or even work on it in your own way. Of course, now they're going further down the road. They're coming out with the autonomous self-driving cars, which are not even interested in saying that they're nominally going to sell to you. They're turning everything into a renting model. They want to make renters out of all of us. We've seen this with the International Monetary Fund. And this is what they have been doing for a long time. This is the model that they want. They want everyone to become their serfs, to become their renters, and nowhere is this more clear than in the way Monsanto has used these seeds against farmers in India. Continue on with what you were saying about this software licensing model. That's very important for people to understand.
David, it's a sharecropper model, right? You basically want to make people become essentially slaves. And it's a model that's essentially anti-American, because in many ways it's monopolistic at its deep, deep core, that basically forces people where they're essentially selling their land, whether they know it or not, in an indirect but direct way to organizations like Monsanto. And this is, again, I get back to that point when Kissinger said, if you want to control nations, you don't need to control oil, but control the soil. And that is fundamentally what these organizations are doing. And at the heart of it, if you go back to the core of this, you have so-called intellectual liberal elites like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, who has allowed people like, for example, Michael Taylor, who's a former head of science policy at Monsanto, to be appointed deputy director at the FDA, where they have put in together policies which has allowed the Monsantos of the world to essentially control this entire process. And yet these same people, what the irony of it is, these same people have the gall to promote themselves as liberal intellectuals who care for all of us. And I'm so disgusted by this because for me, having been at MIT in and out of there for 33 years, I'm sort of an insider in some sense. And like Donald Trump says, how he knows how Wall Street operates, I know how academia operates. It's all about control. Many of these academics really do not even care about profit. They care about controlling narratives. So in this model, the narrative to control, as we saw in that MIT article, is that everyone must need GMOs. So they create that narrative, which perpetuates into organizations like Monsanto, essentially feeds their marketing engine.
Yeah, and that's the whole essence, is that the fact that they hide this, that it is very dark, very subtle. They hide this information just the way they hide it from the farmers. These farmers didn't know they were going to get hooked into a sharecropper model with Monsanto. They ultimately wind up in massive numbers committing suicide when they find out how bad it's become. And they had the Dark Act, where they said, we're tired of fighting these battles that are developing at the local and state level where people want to know what's in their food. They want to know if it's GMO, and they don't even want that to happen. And they take it to the federal level to say, we're going to shut down all local and state laws. We're going to hide this from people. That's the essence. If we can shine the light on it, that's the key.
Exactly. And what's interesting, what you said with the Dark Act, is some of the so-called liberal elites of the organic movement actually sold out the non-GMO movement. They actually collaborated with the politicians and lobbyists in Washington to make the non-GMO, the GMO labeling so difficult for ordinary people by making it a QR code where you needed a smartphone. Well, not every average American has a smartphone. So over and over and over again, you see this hypocrisy of the liberal academics claiming they care for minorities and ordinary people, when in fact, their entire process is actually subvert the entire process of truth and science, and to essentially promote these very, very false narratives and fake news, be it on email or be it on GMOs, or as we're seeing right now. I know you guys have covered it on the Russian hacking.
They thrive on the misinformation. They thrive on hiding it. Thank you so much, Dr. Ayyadurai. And I think it is amazing, the irony, as you point out, that the guy who tried to destroy you was exposed by email, which you invented, and we now know that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. Owen Schroyer joined by Leanne McAdoo, and we've got more news to cover throughout the rest of today's broadcast. But Alex Jones has responded to the Vice documentary that was just shot on him. Here's his response video.
I refuse most newspaper interviews, most magazine interviews, and most national TV interviews because I've done Nightline, I've done CNN, Fox, HBO, Discovery Channel. I've done it all over and over again. There have been a few Discovery Channel and History Channel shows I've done where I basically host them and I'm the main narrator throughout the program. And I was able to do those because those did have scripts. And so I could basically pre-approve them. I could pre-approve the questions I was going to be asked, and then I had the authorization to give the answers I wanted and knew that it wouldn't be edited in a major or substantive way. The problem is that most companies refuse to do that deal with me, so I just refuse to be part of their shows. Now, in the case of Vice, there wasn't a script of questions because obviously it's a news program. And I knew that the host was one of the more libertarian individuals on Vice, and that he'd done some good work in the past. So I said, listen, I figure it's a hit piece, but you can come on down. And when he got there, he basically admitted to me that he is a libertarian, but he disagrees with some of what I stand for. But that indeed, you know, if this wasn't somewhat of a hit piece, he probably wouldn't get on air. And I said, well, that's what I figured. Whatever, let's just do it. Because I know Gavin McInnes, one of the founders of Vice. I used to like Vice. I've really seen it go downhill in its production quality like everybody else has since HBO bought it. But that's just the way it is. So I sit there and I waste hours being interviewed and hours being followed around at the office that day. They're up there until like 7:30 at night. And then they air a 5.5-minute piece on Vice News about getting your news from the fringe. Well, something is at the fringe by definition if it's dominating and if it has higher ratings than a lot of mainstream news, which they admit in the piece. So yeah, it was actually fair in some ways. But then he did this Perry Mason moment thing repeatedly. And I said, oh, I see what you're doing. He wanted to have this gotcha moment where he would say something like, oh, you have this graph here on your board saying Russian state-run media is trusted. And I say, yes. And then it cuts to him going, are you effing kidding me? Are you f***ing serious? Like he's Carl the Cuck or something. When what I really said was, yes, it says it's amongst the most trusted of state-run media on this graph, but this is not my graph. All we did was invert the mainstream media graph that they'd created to point out to the public that all they did was basically stack some names on one side and other names on the other, and it was all just according to who was pro-establishment, who was anti-establishment, and the whole thing was deceptive. And so I went on to explain that the graph on the wall was one that we'd drawn on the wall before we actually created one with Photoshop to bring out this point. And anybody listening remembers whenever I actually did break that graph down and explain that it wasn't totally accurate, because all we'd done was flip what they'd done. But see, that wasn't in there. It just cut to me going, yes, Russia is the most trusted media. Psh. And he goes, are you effing kidding me? So he then goes on to say, Alex, doesn't just have a reality problem here. He's got it in other places. So at key parts, they had to twist or manufacture what I said to misrepresent it to the public. And this is the essence of what these people do over and over and over again. And so now it might be a year or two again until I'll let MSM into the building and then go through the same thing over and over again, because all they do is they come to act like they've interviewed you, whether it's a newspaper or magazine or TV, to then distort things and then to pretend that they're journalists. So that's what they did here, and it's ridiculous. Also, they show one of our YouTube channels and then admit we're bigger than NBC and a bunch of other major channels. That's one of our YouTube channels. I showed him the others. I showed him billions more views, showing we're #1. He didn't put that in there. So they also played down how big we are, still admitting we're bigger than almost everybody else. So again, it isn't about who's big, just to be big. If we were stupid Disney stuff, it wouldn't matter. We're hardcore. We're telling the truth. We're a shoestring budget out of Austin, Texas, and we're defeating Goliath. That's the big news. We don't need you. I don't need Fox News. I don't need CNN. I don't need Vice. I don't need any of you, and I'm sick of you. And by the way, none of us need you. And the answer is just tune out of all of it, folks, or watch it for entertainment and laugh at it and critique it. And keep me honest as well. But the point is, these people are a joke, and it's why they want to censor us and label us as fake, hoping everybody comes back to them. You guys collapse because people know you're fake. And this piece wasn't on a scale of 1 to 10 the most fake. Let's say, 1 being the most truthful, a 10 being completely lies, like say CNN. I mean, I'd say it was about a 5. Because a lot of it was true, but a lot of it was bull, which is rare. I mean, I'll be honest. I did the interview because this guy's done some pretty good pieces in the past. It's pretty funny. So, but he pulled the Perry Mason moments. He pulled those big time. Here's a few of the clips.
Alex Jones is probably America's best known and most influential conspiracy theorist. Jones's radio program and online television network reaches millions, with frothing rants claiming the Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax and that 9/11 was an inside job. On a conference room whiteboard, his staff had mapped out media organizations they believe are enemies of freedom. I noticed that you're the most free and independent is, oddly enough, you.
Yes.
How did do you know how we got here?
I was just saying, used to Vice, before it was owned by the bigwigs, would be kind of more over here, but now it's kind of the middle.
So I just want to be clear that Vice is here on the Tyranny and Freedom Index, but these two who are owned by the Kremlin are more free than the media organization that you're talking about.
No, they're up at the top and state-run.
But they're also closer to the freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I found their stuff to be more based in reality.
Are you fucking serious?
Donald Trump, knew who I was, knew what I was doing. Talked to him some here and there. The whole point is it's not about me. I'm just pointing out the movement that was already there that he basically surfed in on.
But you're the loudest person talking about it. You're the most successful person talking about it.
Bigger waves are coming. We don't rise and fall with Trump. Now you're going to see the next wave. Good luck with that.
What is that guy's name from Vice that shot that? What is his name?
I don't know.
I honestly don't know his name, but honestly, that is what Carl the Cuck is going to look like in 40 years or whatever it is. I'm sorry.
Are you kidding?
I'm not even dissing the guy. Whatever, like he's fine, anything, but that's what Carl the Cuck is going to look like. So there's Alex Jones' response to the Vice documentary. I'm sure you can go check that out for yourself. We've got some other news to cover here. Now, this is something that Turkey has actually done before, Leanne, but they continue to harp this. Turkey, a NATO ally, continues to accuse the U.S. of supporting ISIS And of course, this is Erdogan has repeatedly accused its NATO ally, the United States, of supporting the Islamic State. We've documented this. We know just how they did it. They call them moderate rebels. It's really ISIS. They say they want to take down the dictator Assad, so they arm the moderate rebels, but it's really ISIS here, there. Now, you look at some of the stuff they're saying. The Turkish president said, it's very clear. We have confirmed evidence with pictures, photos, and videos. Well, yeah, I've seen them too, actually. ISIS is bragging about this. Years. And then you've got the State Department spokesman, Mark Toner, responded. He says they're ludicrous, of course. But you'll notice he goes on in the statement, and instead of saying they're supporting ISIS, he says Daesh. So they're continuing this wordplay, ISIS, ISIL. They use Taliban again today, I think, when they were referring to Iraq. So there's all these different things. He uses Daesh here. But Leanne, this is more, and I'm not even saying I support the president of Turkey, but at least he's raising the issue here of what's happening with ISIS and how they're getting these weapons and all the support in Syria.
Right. Well, I mean, they're arming and funding terrorists on a different group. So it's just a huge mess what's going on there. All of these dictatorships, including our own with President Obama, they're all coming to the forefront now and fighting with each other and stabbing each other in the back, basically, pointing fingers, but they're all guilty of the same thing. And
they really try to politicize these civil wars, these religious wars that have been going on. They start proxy wars in those regions with people like Osama bin Laden. But now, because these areas are so war-torn, we're obviously seeing the increase in refugees coming to the United States. Now, this has been politicized as well, especially in the presidential election here that saw Trump win. But in a new exclusive video, this is on the Daily Caller, immigration official okays Syrian immigrants with fake passports. An undercover video, an undercover video exclusively obtained by the Daily Caller Tuesday claims to show an immigration official in New York giving advice on how illegal Syrian immigrants can receive asylum with fake passports.
Wow.
The place that this video is from is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. The person who was saying this can be heard saying chances are, considering the situation in Syria, they're not going to be sent back. That's in response to the question, I've got this family here. They're worried about their fake passports, them getting taken back. The guy says, oh, well, chances are, considering what's going on in Syria, they're not going to be sent back. Leanne?
What could possibly go wrong? I mean, where have we heard before with terrorists using fake passports to cross over into Germany and undetected? Meanwhile, they had committed crimes in Italy and then went on to go commit terror attacks. What could possibly go wrong with allowing people in and then coaching them on how to use their fake passports?
Well, and it's ridiculous, too, because we raise awareness to the lack of vetting or how you can't vet these people. But it's even worse. The vetting, they don't even care about it. Oh, yeah, we vetted you. That's fake. Go ahead. So if you're not going to even follow through with the proper vetting, what's the point? We'll have more on the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. Owen Schroyer, Leanne McAdoo on the other side.
Total madness.
Welcome back to the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. Owen Schroyer, Leanne McAdoo with you. And right now at InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, we have some great specials going to help you get your New Year's resolution off to the right start, help you make your body great again. That's what we're calling the initiative, Make Bodies Great Again. You go to InfoWarsStore.com, all kinds of specials going on there. We've got all kinds of products. You can see the Bio True Selenium. David was talking about how this is the true selenium, the pure selenium from the pure mustard seed. That's one that I take every morning. One of the many InfoWars products I take every morning, part of my Making My Body Great Again initiative. But there's other products. The nascent iodine is my favorite product probably of all of them. Roger Stone was on earlier talking about how if he didn't have the brain force, he's not sure if he would have the energy and the focus dealing with some of his illness to complete that book. So make sure you go there and check out all the products. You're going to find one that you absolutely fall in love with. I promise you that. The Deep Cleanse, that's also one that I'm taking as to start my new year off to help me cleanse. There's all types of great products for anything you want to do. You want to cleanse, you want to get stronger, you want more energy, B12, you want to fall asleep better, knockout. I mean, seriously, there's everything on there. Go to InfoWars Life. Make sure to take advantage of these specials before we sell out.
Well, and the body armor, don't forget about that.
The new body armor.
We got a video coming up about
Yeah, actually Alex does have a video that we're gonna play here in the next segment talking about the body armor. Some people don't like that we sell body armor. You know what? You know what's gonna happen? we're just going to sell more of it.
Exactly. They're going to go, wait a minute, what is this? I can get body armor there? Nice. And all 7 different colors? Fantastic.
It's the best body armor, too, at the best price. So that's another special that we have going. So this is something that we found today, or that you came across today. You want to talk about this? Apparently, we found where Pepe came from, folks.
Yes, well, this is the evidence of the Russians influencing our election, because we know that this Pepe meme really spread like wildfire. Well, now the Russian embassy tweeted out a Pepe meme. It was that Pepe the Frog, and this was, the tweet said, in today's papers, pundits call on Theresa May to disrupt possible Russia-U.S. thaw. No trust in Britain's best friend and ally? So, of course, they immediately got some backlash from the SJWs here. Hey, are you aware of that image's popularity among white nationalists? So, anyway, is Pepe the Frog, was this part of the Russian interference in the election to spread the Pepe?
Well, here's what's funny about it is that now you have the Russian embassy trolling social justice warriors. This is the level that it's come to in the year 2017 with the Russian embassy.
They did the lame duck to troll Obama the other day. Memes are very powerful.
Meme wars.
They're very
That's what
powerful.
they're calling this. You know, I actually tweeted out a meme earlier. It's of Martin Luther King with a "Make America Great Again" hat on.
Be sure and share that.
Make sure you share that. I'd love to see that go as
viral
as the Russian Pepe. Apparently,
we tweeted
a
it,
Russian agent.
The Reverend.
The Reverend. Let me tell you something. If Al Sharpton is a Reverend, I'm an astronaut. All right, I'll see you on Mars, Al.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. I'm going to have a huge march and protest of Donald.
Hey, yeah, there it is. There's the Martin Luther King. Because here's the deal. The Reverend, the Rev, is going to have a protest on Martin Luther King Day protesting Donald Trump and Senator Sessions. So, but apparently that's failing. And I've got a story on that we're going to get to later.
Yes.
But you know what the truth is, though? The truth is that social justice warriors and some radical liberals were actually more offended by Pepe the Frog, a cartoon frog, than they were by the actual kidnapping and hate crimes that we saw in Chicago. Right. So how do you like that?
Well, this is more, that's just, I know we're going to do a segment for the nightly news tonight on you might be.
Are we going to do that on the nightly news?
Logic. Maybe even we can do it later.
Maybe a little special. So I came up with this thing.
Tasty taste, but
it's like it's off the. I guess it was Jeff Foxworthy that
Yes.
you might be a redneck if. So we're going to do our own version. You might be a liberal if. I've got like 15 of these.
If Pepe the Frog, this cartoon
that wasn't on there, but it needs to be.
If you're more offended by this than you are about the kidnapping and torture of a mentally challenged person and hate crime.
The trolling is, but it's like, what are you supposed to do? I can't engage in a civil or educated argument with these people, so I just have to troll them. I have to meme war them. There's no intellect. There's not a battlefield of intellect there. Speaking of battlefields, soon coming to a battlefield, military micro-drones. The Pentagon has successfully tested micro-drone swarm. The Pentagon may soon be unleashing a 21st century version of locusts on its adversaries after they successfully tested a swarm of 103 micro-drones.
Fantastic.
You can go check out the video of this. It's pretty wild stuff. But this is apparently the latest in military technology. This is the Alex Jones 4th Hour. Come back on the other side. We'll hear again from Alex Jones and what he thinks about our new body armor.
I get Google alerts with my name or INFOWARS.com in the headline or body of the story. Sometimes thousands of links get sent to me. Usually it's just 50, 60, 100 or so. But almost every day there's a couple from Media Matters that's listed by Google as a news platform, but INFOWARS is not. Isn't that cute? But again, they're the bosses. They define things. Just like they defined it as profiteering off of the Florida shooting last week by another jihadi, that we happen to be selling body armor, nanotech, beyond space age, lightweight body armor at InfoWarsStore.com. They put 2 and 2 together. It's incredible. It's so miraculous. And they figured out that we were connecting it to the shooting and saying you needed it. Kind of like, let's say if I went to Colorado in December and I wanted to go skiing, and the weather report said it was real cold, so I might want to get some thermal underwear and a thick coat. Yes, that's right. We're selling body armor because of shootings and mass shootings and other events like that and societal breakdown. Yes, you caught us. Now, is it called profiteering? I don't know. We also sell toothpaste so that your teeth are healthy at InfoWarsStore.com. Yes, your teeth will rot out if you don't brush them several times a day and if you don't get them cleaned several times a year. Yes, that's not called profiting off of and exploiting people's teeth falling out. That's making money selling somebody something they need. Think about how crazy this is, but I don't know what you call it, because I see it all the time where they try to define reality over and over again, where they'll take the most simple, common sense thing and then turn it into something dirty and something bad. Like, oh, look, he's profiting off the Fort Lauderdale shooting because his guest host, David Knight and Owen Schroyer, they pointed out, see, for events like this, when you're traveling or whatever, you're able to put this insert into a backpack, or you're able to wear this lightweight body armor, and it weighs 5 times less than the conventional. Oh, what a great innovation. They make jokes about how we call it space age and now only available to the public for the first time, and how state police and the military are using it. Again, it's all true. You see, when we sell products, whether it's non-GMO heirloom seeds or supplements or body armor or lowers, for guns, we're bad. And it doesn't matter if it's illogical. It's all about they control reality. Just like when they say, don't say you have a mother and father, say you're, not a boy or girl, you're a purple penguin. Or don't use the word black, use the word African American, or whatever new word we come up with. Don't say Christmas, say holiday. And now they say, don't say holiday. It's all about them controlling reality. So you read the article and it reads like satire, but they're deadly serious. Also, the type of people that are authoritarian leftists have grown up multi-generations in cities. Most of them don't even know how to basically screw a water hose in, and water their own yard, because they don't have yards. And they see everyone else who has abilities, and everyone else who's somewhat self-sufficient, and everybody else who's masculine as a threat. That's why colleges all over the country are saying, don't be masculine. Masculine is a microaggression. Men with muscles, men who are strong, men who are confident. It's evil. Only women can do that. And women are allied with the state, because the great lawgivers, the Moseses of our world at Media Matters, like David Brock, because he has that big hair, he's got George Soros money, and he said so. Oh, and of course, Media Matters also caught me. It's always like they catch me on TV. I do that secretly. I'm on TV secretly. When I went on national Russian television, of course, we've been airing this ourselves, and talked to some of the folks that are top Putin advisors, at least 2 of them, and I did brag that, hey, we're reaching out and promoting freedom with Russia, and promoting free market capitalism, and promoting pro-family values, and promoting linking up to defeat radical Islam. Oh, but the military-industrial complex doesn't like that. Our military is all for that. But the actual folks selling us, these fighter bombers that have taken 20 years to develop and cost $1.5 billion a piece, and it's up to $1 trillion+ for the program, they're not the traitors. No. It's us that don't want weapon systems that are total ripoffs. We're the bad people. Why, Trump's a Russian agent. Well, if I'm an agent of the Russians and if Trump's a Russian agent, then I'm an Easter bunny. But I'll say this. Russia wants to make us great again. Russia wants to have trade deals with us. Russia wants us to explore oil and gas in their country. Russia wants family values. Russia wants private property. Boy, this sounds like a real enemy to me. Meanwhile, the communist Chinese are in our business, buying up Hollywood, telling us what to do, controlling what movies come out, and even they got caught censoring Michael Savage's book. And I've personally dealt with the garbage out of the Communist Chinese, but they're not a problem, having both ends of the Panama Canal and exporting their male population all over the world, and 98% of rare earth minerals, and involved in everything, and buying up tens of thousands of U.S. companies. They're not an issue. No, 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 no. It's the evil Donald Trump that Chrysler just announced is moving factories back here. Oh my God, these Russian agents, they're so horrible. He just announced the biggest blue water navy in our history. And new attack submarines and nuke cruisers and aircraft carriers, and because he's a Russian agent. That's what the Russians do. They build up the military. He's buying what the generals and admirals say we need, not what the rip-off globalists have been selling us as part of the overall plan to sabotage this nation. China's developing real weapons that work. We're developing crap. We've been sabotaged. The globalists are the enemy. They're the ones that have hijacked the country, and America and the world is waking up big time to this, and we're sick of the traitors sapping this country dry, the globalists telling us we're the traitors. We know who the traitors are, scumbags. And yes, folks are buying the body armor. It's a bestseller now. I want to thank you all for your support. But the introductory price, it's amazing. Check out the nanotube, beyond space age, available in every configuration that they have, made right here in America, invented at the University of Texas at InfoWarsStore.com, and stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Bozo the clown over there at Media Matters, you can go straight to you-know-where. Good luck, by the way. Shut the media off. Good luck with that. Little Soros minion, you're only going to make us explode that much faster. But I understand you have a fop haircut and a pseudo-intellectual little bug eyes and little Pomeranian hair you comb up to look real smart, like some type of bird of paradise. So I better roll over into the ditch and give up because I have hundreds of times the audience you do, scum.
Man, Alex, tell us how you really feel about David Brock, huh? How about that, Leanne? Welcome back to
hair is infuriating.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. Owen Schroyer, Leanne McAdoo. And the body armor is selling because it's some of the best priced and best body armor available. And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat what Alex said. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, David Brock, and the rest of the mainstream media that doesn't like the fact that we fund ourselves. Sorry we don't have to take money from big pharma like you do, but we'll be just fine selling that body armor. Now, this is something I was thinking about. This is kind of off the cuff, Leanne, but I just wanted to get this off my chest, and maybe you can respond to this. This is actually something that woke me up after the Boston Marathon bombing. It was part of my becoming woke process to trigger the lefties.
You're not allowed to say that, right?
I'm woke. But you remember the Boston Marathon bombing, there was a huge manhunt afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. They shut down the city, they shut down the streets, and there was this all-out, full-on manhunt for the two alleged bombers. Mm-hmm. Now, there's been no manhunt for Seth Rich. There's been no manhunt, no cities shut down, no blocks shut down, no serious search in Chicago for the record number of homicides. And I remember what woke me up to this was actually not even a week. I think it was after the Boston Marathon bombing. There was a gunman who went into a parade in New Orleans, shot about 8 people. They caught the whole thing on video, and he got away. And there was no manhunt. And I was sitting here thinking, because the whole Boston Marathon thing to me is still a head scratcher, everything that went on there. And I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking, why is there no manhunt? Why is there a manhunt for this event, but none of the other murders that go on every day? I mean, so it was this weird kind of concocted, it didn't seem to make much sense to me. But then you say, well, then wait a second. Oh, I guess these are radical Islamic terrorists that want to blow everybody up. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Are these radical Islamic terrorists that are trying to blow everybody up? Or are these just homicidal maniacs, just like the other hundreds of homicidal maniacs that we never shut down the streets for, that we never have a manhunt for? So I don't know. That was just something I needed to get off my chest, Leanne. I don't know if you want to take it or leave it, but still no manhunt for the Seth Rich killer that we know nothing about, and there's no city shut down in Chicago for the mass number of homicides we saw in 2016.
Right. Well, unfortunately, they'd be shutting down the streets all the time in Chicago if they actually gave a damn about the fact that at least 10 people are shot every single weekend. So
more gun control.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I think.
That'll do it. That'll do that trick.
Let's have a sit-in in the Chicago local government, the local city sit-in for gun control. That'll
Yes,
take care of it.
Pajama jammy jam. Well, speaking of the fox guarding the hen house, so here's a story that just really infuriated me. Maybe you have heard about a story last week, kind of broke. There was a woman charged with killing her adoptive daughter last year. She and her boyfriend acted out this rape and murder fantasy on their 14-year-old adopted daughter, okay? Well, turns out that this woman who was charged in the killing and dismemberment of her daughter worked for child services, and she had about 6 foster kids. So she was an adoption supervisor there in Pennsylvania. She was in charge of deciding if you were fit enough to adopt children. And then her employment status is listed as suspended, okay? Now, why did she get suspended? It doesn't really say, but she left the job nearly a year before her husband at the time was charged by police in the first of 2 child sex abuse cases. So here she was married to another man who is abusing victims under the age of 13 in one instance, another statutory sexual assault under age 16 of another minor. So that then they divorce or whatever happens with them. And then she moves on to this new guy, this new boyfriend who they're basically grooming because they had plotted for nearly a year before this girl was killed in July about this rape and murder and I mean, just terrible. But this is where we're seeing, you know, there's a kind of a flashback. There was a story out of California. 1,000 California foster care homes match sex offender addresses. 1,000 foster homes. So people who are foster parents, 1,000 of them, 600 of those highlighted offenders were considered high risk. How is this happening? How is this happening where you have someone who is in charge of working as the adoption supervisor, she's working for child services, has all these foster children, and these are the stories that you hear, that these kids that go into these foster homes, the state takes away your kids and then sets them up to be victims of child sex trafficking. A lot of times when they go into these foster homes and then they run away and then they're picked up and they get into sex trafficking because they don't have anyone that's looking out for them. They don't have an adult or parental unit looking out for them. I mean, this is just sick. How in the heck in California alone, and I'm sure there are other states where this is happening as well, these are people on sex offender registry and they're foster parents. Well, it's just crazy to me.
There is, you know, a bit of a history with this. There's a bit of a psychology with this as well. That's why I guess, you know, movies like Annie or Matilda exist where, you know, they go to these foster homes and they're just abused. They're treated like garbage. I mean, these stories have been in movies. They've been coming up again and again. And I guess that's just some of the psychology that comes along with the people who want that type of control over children. I'm not saying that this is the case all the time, obviously.
Well, that's the thing is like they'll snatch your kid away if you don't want to give them vaccines or if you don't want to give. If you don't want your child. If you want to try some alternative treatments for your child rather than a lobotomy or giving them a chemotherapy, you want to try loving lobotomy. They'll take your kids away and put them in some foster homes where there have been plenty of stories, and that's actually what prompted this investigation in California. The kid died while he was there in these facilities in this protective care with his caring, loving foster parents. He was died, and there's so many stories like this where these kids get taken from these allegedly bad homes where the parent just doesn't want to, you know, give their kids vaccine, you know, or something like that. And then they put them somewhere where they're raped, they're killed. It's crazy to me.
This is actually
infuriating.
I tweeted this out. It was one of my more popular tweets. Liberals are all about choice until you're born, right?
Right.
You can choose to abort your baby. That's your choice. But then as soon as you're born, well, you don't have a choice anymore. You got to get the vaccine. You got to go to the school. You got to be indoctrinated into everything that we've laid out for because we've chosen what's best. But before you're born, see, now you've got the choice now.
Right, yeah, you don't have the say, and if you want to give your kid chemotherapy, we're going to take your kid away from you. You're not fit to be a parent.
You can abort that kid, but as soon as it's born, that kid is ours.
Yeah.
Don't you be confused, you conservative nut. No. That's my child once it's born. It's your choice before it's born. It's my choice after it's born.
I know there's so many parents out there that are really dealing with the state and child services and fighting with them. So I just wish there was something more people could do when you hear terrible stories like this. this wicked, evil, disgusting human being was in charge of telling other families if they were fit enough to have kids.
And she most likely, you know, tried to get that job because this was her psychology.
Absolutely.
And she knew she could be in that position.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is that's why you have to watch. That's why human trafficking, things like that, are able to be so rampant, because it's people in the positions allowing it to happen. You have your people at the border, your police, your high up politicians. They're involved in this kind of stuff, which is why it is allowed to be so rampant. And it's terrible, but it's true.
That's the only way you could imagine that stuff like this gets away with. I mean, where do all the kids go? I mean, somebody in power has to be controlling this stuff. And it's worth saying, tomorrow is actually National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. So I know that Maggie Howell is hosting the Nightly News tomorrow night. She's going to be filing some special reports on that. Going to have a guest to talk about that. But you know, it all kind of goes along the same path for me. It's sticking up for the innocent. It's sticking up for the children who can't stick up for themselves. And it's making sure that parents, and really it goes beyond parents, because they're trying to take the control out of the parents' hands.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do. And I think more people would be willing to fight this if they knew what type of evil was waiting on the other side, like this psychopath.
Right. There needs to be more power for the parents so that they can fight back, and people can understand that just because the state says you're an unfit parent.
And it's all about awareness. Read the insert in the vaccine. Look at the history of some of these CPS services. Fourth hour, the Alex Jones Show. We'll be back. Final segment, other side. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. Final segment, Owen Schroyer, Leanne McAdoo. And if you like what we do here at InfoWars.com, please support us. Go to InfoWarsStore.com. Go to InfoWarsLife.com. Check out all of our great products. I am a user of most of these products. Most Info Warriors have tried these products out by now. They know how great they are. And you know, it's funny. I was actually thinking about this. I was like, what product do I want to talk about of all the great products at InfoWarsStore.com that I take? Do I want to talk about during this? But then I remembered something that I saw, and you've probably seen this too. Now, Dr. Ed Group, who's the formulator of a lot of these products, talks about one of our products, DNA Force, which is one of the most probably elite, amazing products that we offer. I mean, literally, you know, it could extend your life. And now you can watch on TV people who have essentially now stolen the DNA Force thing. Of course, you're not stealing it, it's health, but now you can see it on TV, people talking about the telomeres. This is something that Dr. Group brought up on InfoWars and the Alex Jones Show a long time ago. Now it's hit the mainstream. Folks, this is the case. InfoWars store products are literally groundbreaking, okay? All of these products you're going to see in a year, 2 years, 3 years on the TV, groundbreaking, the best ever. Well, you're going to have it first at InfoWarsStore.com. Just, you'll see it. I guarantee you'll see the telomeres will extend your life, and then it's some product. We've got the product. It's called DNA Force. It's at InfoWarsStore.com, and it's the best product you can find when you want to protect those telomeres at the end of the strands of your DNA. So get the groundbreaking products, InfoWarsStore.com. Now, we've also got products that can help you focus. And one of the stories that I saw today, this was out of the Telegraph, half of young people have so many emotional problems they cannot focus at school. Now, Leanne, I was thinking about this, okay? And when social media didn't really hit until I was in high school. That's when kind of it really became big. I was never really into it. As a kid, I was playing baseball. I was playing basketball. I was running around the neighborhood on my bike. That was my social media. But, you know, I didn't really get exposed to it. But it's funny, even when it came up in high school, I could tell it was a joke. I never really got into it. And I remember my first Facebook profile to mock everybody who was into Facebook was actually a picture of a guy with his head up his butt, because I viewed that as the person on Facebook. You basically have your head up your butt. But what did you think when you saw this? I mean, we've seen the studies before that social media can lead to depression, but now students can't focus. They have emotional problems.
Well, also, too, you know, to give these kids some credit here, they're very worried about the future. They don't know, you know, are they going to get a job when they get out? They have no hope. Obama promised everyone hope and change, but they have no hope. They don't know if they're going to be able to get it. They're facing like the worst
Michelle admitted it.
Prospects in decades. So these kids are, you know, they're worried about their future. Are they going to have to live with their parents forever? And of course, you know, what's going on in the political atmosphere, which is being overly hyped. What's so frustrating about it is that they're purposefully doing that for kids. Oh, blame Donald Trump, blame the white people, blame your situation, blame everyone except for who's actually responsible for the fact that you are facing the worst job prospects in history. And that's the whole divide and conquer thing. Let's get really enraged and go march on Washington about Donald Trump, who hasn't even done anything yet. He's not the reason why you're facing the worst job. In fact, he's a job creator. Maybe you should go try and get a job at Trump Tower.
Well, we've seen that in spades, and it continues to happen. But it's funny because even in our aspect of life in media, or just when you're interacting with your friends and family, you can see people who are going more towards reality and then going farther out into la-la land. I actually worked with kids before I started here at INFOWARS, and I can tell you, I've noticed the same thing with kids. Either they're like really focused, like sharp as a tack, like, oh my gosh, that kid is amazing, or it's like, oh boy, that kid really needs some help. Well, thanks. What?
People trusted you around their kids?
I'm great with kids, actually. I love the kids. The kids are the future of this country. The kids are the future of this planet. We need to bring them up right. Thanks to everybody who tuned in to the Alex Jones Show today. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, David Knight. This is Owen Schroyer signing off. You stay classy, Info Warriors.